monsters infiltrated the world, making people succumb to despair. They fought to their last breath to protect the place they called home. Among those brave souls was the protagonist of this story, Carcelian Leandian, who fought the threat with relentless ferocity. Many years passed and he kept fighting monsters without rest, piling up corpses with the only sword he had, and without a shred of fear in his heart. Finally, the day came when he fought against Aaron's other mother's brother. That bastard was hard to defeat. The battle was brutal, but eventually he managed to finish off that piece of trash. After the battle, he also succumbed to death, but fate had other plans. With his soul floating in an endless void, he met a human boy from a planet called Earth. The boy's name was Do-jun, who was on the brink of death for an unknown reason. Before dying, he wanted to make a simple request to Banyan, who immediately refused, even before hearing him out. After all, the guy just wanted to die in peace. He was already tired of all the misery. He lost his country to the monsters, lost his loved ones, and in the end died like a dog. Although this boy, Do-jun, actually didn't want to live either. He only desperately wished that his family would have a good life. Well, it seems Banyan is finally ready to hear the boy's wish. The boy lights up like a kid in a candy store and gathers the courage to say he wants his family to live in peace. So our protagonist gladly accepts the task of protecting the boy's family and now finds himself on Earth, inhabiting the body of that teenager, Do-jun. His mission is to infiltrate the Namsen Gate, ranked S for obvious reasons. Only registered heroes are allowed entry. That's why the automatic machine keeps demanding he scan his ID card, which he obviously doesn't have. So, he simply breaks into the guarded building authorized to enter the gate, triggering the security alarm that alerts of the infiltration. Once inside, he starts walking around looking for monsters to crush. That's when he runs into a group of heroes, people with official licenses and permission to be there. They assume our protagonist is lost and offer to show him the exit, especially since they are also heading towards the exit. Do-jun remains silent, giving off a strange vibe that even the heroes notice. He wears casual clothes and doesn't look like a hero at all. Sure, nowadays porters dress more casually, but our protagonist's outfit is too simple. And what's up with that backpack on his back? As far as they know, he's probably just a clueless porter who was abandoned by the group he came with. Still, they're not entirely sure. Finally, Do-jun speaks, acknowledging why they feel so skeptical, but makes it clear he came there on his own, without any group of heroes. Upon hearing this, one of the heroes sighs, understanding the reason behind his presence. He's seen many cases of people obsessed with being heroes and hunting monsters after watching spectacular TV commercials, but that burst of motivation can kill you if you enter the gates without going through the legal procedures. First, you need to officially certify as a hero, then train and take tests, not to mention this gate is rank C for a reason. If you're a rookie just starting your career, you better find a rank at gate before you really lose your life. After listening to the guy, talking non-stop and giving unsolicited advice, Do-jun makes it very clear he doesn't need sermons. Naturally, the group of heroes is puzzled by how coldly this boy responds to them. After all, they were just trying to help, so they get a little angry, but the leader tells his companions to calm down. If the boy doesn't want help, let him be. The leader is convinced that this boy eventually he will learn the hard way, because you shouldn't cover your ears when someone wise is speaking. They hope he discovers the truth. You shouldn't cover your ears when someone wise is speaking. They hope he discovers the truth. How ruthless these gates can be, very different from TV shows that glorify being a hero, as if it were the second coming of Christ. And so, finally, Do-jun comes across a huge troll staring at him, ready to devour him alive. The monster launches an attack but misses and hits the ground. The guy moves so fast that the troll couldn't even process what the hell had happened. Then, he clenches his fist and throws a devastating punch, so hard that it blows the orc's face off with a single punch. Now that the monster is out of the way, the good part comes, time to loot Dad. First, he takes the sword that guy was carrying. Then he uses that same sword to finish inside the monster's body and extracts a shiny stone. It's a low-quality magic stone, so insignificant that Do-jun didn't even bother picking them up in his past life, but now that he's broke, he has no choice. Suddenly, more monsters invade the area, furious after seeing their companion beheaded. Do-jun turns around and throws the magic stone, so fast that it blows the head off one of them. The other two fools rush to attack as if they had a suicidal desire, and Do-jun is more than happy to fulfill it while wreaking havoc. We go back to the group of heroes crossing this monster-infested territory. Currently, their minds are still thinking about the encounter they had with that young man. The red-haired woman is really worried about Do-jun's well-being, fearing he might end up dead, but the group leader assures her that's unlikely. If he really is an unauthorized guy who got into the gate, the control center agents will find him soon. Those agents on missions are always rank B or higher, and since this gate is rank C, there's no way he'll die here, as long as he doesn't run wildly toward the monsters. The bald guy agrees with the leader's opinion. He's pretty sure the arrogant brat must be trembling with fear, waiting for the agents to save his ass from disaster. Well, the story is quite the opposite. It's our protagonist who is literally making these jumbo-sized sandbags tremble with fear. One hit and the prey falls. He's so fast they can't even touch him, much less crush him with the weight of their weapons. He appears right behind one of the fools and kicks him, so hard it destroys his head. With all the useless ones on the ground, he grabs one of their swords and proceeds to collect the sweet magic stones for himself. After a while, he finishes filling his backpack and is ready to leave, although honestly, he's pretty disappointed with what he collected today. Basically, he has dead weight in the bag with all those low-grade gems. Just then, one of the agents finally sees him and calls his companions. Before our protagonist can fully turn around, those suited guys give him a stern look. First, they explain that they are from the Gate Control Center and suggest he show his hero registration card. If he's not registered, he has to go with them to the center. Our protagonist is not very convinced, which makes the suited guy even tenser, who becomes colder and insists he cooperate and follow the proper procedures. The only response they get is an expression of annoyance marked on Dojin's face, with all this unnecessary drama ruining his mood. Still, the guy has no energy to argue. He simply turns around to leave. Since words don't work, the guys threaten to handcuff him, and he refuses to cooperate. They even say they will use physical force if necessary. One of the more impatient ones dares to grab his hand and threatens him with the injuries he will suffer if he doesn't cooperate. To make matters worse, he tells him all the responsibility will be his, so it's best to settle everything with words, and not with violence. It seems Dojin is already tired of so much chatter, so he grabs the guy's hand and warns him to stop being a thorn in his path. This chilling warning instinctively scares the man in the suit, who feels a shiver run down his spine. The other two guys pull out their magical batons. Actually, they're grade 4 magical staffs, powerful enough to subdue an orc, but not strong enough to physically hurt our protagonist. So, Dojin twists the guy's hand with such aggression that he makes him whimper like the coward he is. Then he issues a final warning. They better get lost if they don't want to lose the last shred of dignity they have left. Finally, the agents, compelled by duty, try to resort to violence. They do their best to hit our protagonist with the magical staffs, but none manage to reach him. Our protagonist throws a devastating blow directly to the back of one of the guys, then hits another in the abdomen. Then he focuses on the guy with glasses, the last one standing. The last guy senses what's coming and tenses up. Dojin vanishes, disappearing into thin air, causing the guy to panic upon literally seeing a man vanish. Then, out of nowhere, a stealthy punch lands directly in the stomach, making the guy stagger, reeling from the pain. It seems Dojin is already fed up with all the chase and the agents harassing him, so he finally starts considering registering as a hero. After all, people assure him that as long as he avoids shady or illegal things, no one will be hunting him. Dojin then asks about this thing called a rift, a question that leaves people completely baffled. Some context about how this world works. There are multiple passages that connect to another world where strange monsters live. These passages are scattered all over the planet. The magical gems extracted from the monsters' bodies are used as new energy sources, making them highly coveted. For this reason, the government supervises these passages to have total control over each one. Every passage controlled by the government and open heroes is called a gate. Passages that are not controlled or closed are known as rifts. Returning to our protagonist, he finds it ridiculously annoying that these suited guys follow him everywhere, accusing him of invasion, no matter which gate he passes through. The poor agent explains that if an unregistered hero enters a gate without permission, the control center is automatically notified and nearby agents are sent immediately. Since our protagonist is thinking about entering a rift, the agent makes it clear that these are not as easy to access as gates. Entering a rift without permission results in severe punishment, with no warnings or deals. Dojin isn't interested in hearing any of that, so he grabs the poor guy by the face and throws him aside like a trash bag. By now, the poor agent regrets not having called headquarters. This is way over his pay grade. Before leaving, Dojin takes one last look at the guy lying there, thinking about how weak that man is. The weakling seems to have a broken arm and is busy shouting threats, promising to catch our protagonist and put him in jail. The scene shifts to the gas and digital complex of Seoul in the Gwangshan district. This huge building is now known as the Hero Complex. Here, all transactions related to magical stones or anything found in the gates take place, and nowadays this place is busier than ever. You can see Dojin heading to one of the shops dedicated to buying and selling magical stones. Upon entering, he is greeted by a Gen Z guy busy watching Instagram reels that seem to melt brains. When Dojin says he wants to sell some magical stones, the clever shop owner immediately starts bragging about his business, saying that this branch offers the best prices in the country. He even claims they are the best in the entire nation. Dojin, finally places all the low-quality gems, stained with monster blood, on the counter, which makes the shop owner make a disgusted face. He is visibly repulsed by all the blood stuck to the stones, but still, he doesn't complain and proceeds with the transaction. They offer Dojin a coffee while they process the stones. A while later, he is drinking his coffee while the owner cleans carefully the blood off the gems. Then, the owner calculates the total amount. There are 12 low-quality magical stones, 16 medium quality, plus 5 of superior and inferior quality. After deducting a 40% commission, Dojin is about to receive around 5.5 million won. Our protagonist is very comfortable. Giving 40% as commission just seems unfair to him, since he did all the homework and wasted his time, so he doesn't understand why this guy thinks he deserves almost half the money. The shop owner, proudly, claims he is being generous, charging only 40%, especially since all his competitors charge 45% or more. He is so confident that he even tells Dojin he can take his stones back if he doesn't like the price. After all, no one else will offer him more, or at least that's what this guy claims. Our protagonist falls into that trap and starts putting his valuable stones back into his backpack. Seeing that his tricks don't work, the guy grabs Dojin's hand before he leaves and demands compensation for the appraisal and the coffee he drank. 30,000 won for the appraisal plus 10,000 for the coffee, not to mention all the blood he had to clean, which ruined his expensive towel. Adding all that up, supposedly Dojin owes the guy about 350,000 won. Dojin is not going to give in to those ridiculous demands, no matter how much that crazy guy insists. When nothing works, the guy stoops to the level of a street thug and threatens Dojin with the S-class heroes he has as bodyguards. Just at that moment, those big guys burst in through the back door asking why they were called. If someone is causing trouble, they are ready to take care of it. Dojin, in response, shoots a sharp look at the guy, who returns the gaze with the same intensity. A while passes and the scene cuts to the sweaty, terrified face of the shop owner, who before acted like he was the protagonist but got a good dose of reality when Dojin defeated his 3 thugs without even breaking a sweat, making clear who the real protagonist is. Our hero then approaches the counter and calmly negotiates the commission, lowering it to 1% without anyone saying a word. We all know you don't argue when someone like Dojin looks you straight in the soul, so the deal is closed and Dojin leaves with a good wad of bills for all the loot he got with his sweat, or rather, with his fists. His grandmother and sister are totally amazed by the amount of money. The grandmother, Pa, even suspects that Dojin is cheating with counterfeit bills, but he quickly clears things up, saying the money came from lending cash to a friend who started a business and did very well. The grandmother isn't sure if her grandson even has such a friend. He tries to convince her with another lie, that he was a childhood friend. Eventually, if the grandmother stops asking questions, at least the important ones. Meanwhile, Dojin's sister is super proud of her older brother for making the family rich. The caring brother pets her and gives her hope about the luxurious life they will live from now on. The girl simply jumps for joy at being rich. Seeing her so happy, Dojin realizes that he is really making progress in fulfilling a promise he once made. He remembers the words of the original owner of the body he now possesses, whose last wish before dying was that his grandmother and his half-sister, named Junior, live safe and happy lives. That poor boy disappeared just before Dojin could say anything, and when he woke up, he had already become Dojin. Now, his only mission is to make sure this small family lives safely and comfortably. For that, he wants to buy the safest house in Korea, which currently costs 110 billion won. For him, making money won't be a problem as long as he recovers his original strength. This world shares many similarities with the one that was destroyed. The only big difference is that the cracks, gates, and monsters here are all slightly weaker than those in the world he once saw fall, who in his previous life held the title of Sword God. This place is nothing more than a sandbox. So far, he has only been fighting with 1/10 of his original power. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door and the visitor says they want to see Dojin. The guy gets up and decides to open it. Doing so, he finds 2 thugs waiting outside. These guys are here to collect a debt. Don supposedly owes an absurd 48 million won. Seeing this, Don is sure they are loan sharks, the same ones, the real. Don borrowed money from before leaving this world forever, although it was originally only 5 million won for his grandmother's hospital bills. These guys are charging the ridiculous interest and now demand 10 times what they lent. They know he's been making money lately thanks to the gates, so they want him to pay. Since everything is documented in the contract, but the only form of payment these guys accept is a punch in the face. The big guy breaks one of their jaws. That single punch sends the poor thug flying, leaving his partner with his jaw hanging in shock. Our protagonist then throws a deadly look at the weakling to remind him that more than 9 million won have already been paid. So, if you do the math, these guys should be paying him interest. With another punch that makes the guy cry, as the threat he is, Dojin tells him to let his boss know that he himself will pay a visit. The scene shifts to a lively shopping mall where we see the sweet little Lee Jun glowing with excitement in a toy store. Dojin took her there for a shopping spree. Today she has full freedom to take whatever she wants. And our banana was always so soft-hearted. Or, those who in his past life were the memories of the original Dojun are the ones that revived his faded emotions. Seeing how Dojin treated Junior, even though she was only his half-sister, warmed his heart, so he wants to do the same, give all the love he can to this little one. The girl finally chooses a plush toy she really wants, a small but adorable bunny. She picks it modestly, making sure not to seem extravagant, but Dojin gives her a much bigger one. He doesn't want her to hold back for anything. It's her day, and she can choose whatever she wants without worrying about money. They also treat themselves to good food. While enjoying the meal, an unknown voice calls our protagonist by name. It's a middle-aged woman accompanied by a group of bodyguards. This chubby girl seems like another trash talker who loves to hate our protagonist. First, she criticizes his poor fashion sense, then questions the girl sitting next to him. She has the audacity to throw a hint, insinuating that he got someone pregnant and that this girl is his daughter, just as her mother brought him into this world. Of course, those verbal stabs infuriate our protagonist. Beyond all that, meanwhile, that the little girl has no idea who this lady is or why she talks so much trash so casually. This girl quickly shifts her attention to the child and asks for her name. The girl introduces herself as Lee Jun, which makes this trash realize that she is Dojin's sister. Out of habit, the woman makes a comment about her clothes, also calling her a mess. This viper doesn't even forgive the girl's deceased mother, and all of this is testing our protagonist's patience, but for some reason, he is holding back, not letting himself be provoked. Even this woman seems surprised that Dojin keeps his composure and doesn't fall into her traps. So this witch decides to go one step further. This pathetic fat woman has the audacity to ask a girl what the word prostitute means. That was the limit. Dojin explodes and calls her an ugly woman who belongs to an orc tribe. Of course, the woman is left speechless, completely baffled. A bit of context to understand why Dohun has been putting up with this woman until now. It turns out, Dohun was born as an illegitimate child and lived in poverty. At the tender age of 7, his mother died and he barely managed to reach his father's house, who was married to a new woman. He was rejected by everyone. Things got worse when his father's legitimate wife gave birth to a son and Dohun was completely ignored. The situation got so bad that he was kicked out of the house where he lived and ended up living with his half-sister at his grandmother's house. As he reflects, he feels compassion for the original Dohun, who had to endure all that, and still tried to smile as if nothing hurt him. But now he wants to change everything. It seems this woman is his stepsister, which explains why he was trying to hold back, but he's not going to tolerate her anymore. He remembers how he shared a roof with this orc woman, and she's still as disgusting as ever. Not only does she have a rotten personality and a monster-worthy appearance, she's also stupidly ignorant. He crushes her spirit even more by throwing brutal truths at her, that she's a mess, with such a huge inferiority complex that she projects her insecurities onto others by calling them ugly. She's just a gold digger, obsessed with other people's lives, and that's the truth the world should know. While he keeps crushing her with his sharp comments, the entire mall watches them as if they were the main attraction. The orc woman is completely upset and about to lose control, but then, Dohun's stepmother enters. Seeing her mother, the orc woman approaches her like the pathetic crybaby she is, complaining about how this boy verbally humiliated her. But her mother looks annoyed to see her whining like that and silences her with a cold stare. I'm not going to lie, the guy has a stepmother to be feared. At first, I even thought the orc woman was his stepmother. This elegant woman turns her attention to our protagonist and greets him with utmost grace, inviting him to come home and have a good time. But Dohun knows very well that all that kindness is pure falsehood. After all, she was the one who caused him the most misery and distress during the 12 years he lived with them. The woman keeps reminding him of things he'd rather bury forever, triggering his post-traumatic stress and putting him into full serious mode. With a tone colder than your mom's jokes, our protagonist tells this viper to leave. That's a direct blow to her dignity. Being insulted by someone younger than her simply makes her spin on her heels and leave with the little dignity she had left. Honestly, she didn't expect him to answer so directly. She stayed, wondering if he's the same boy who used to lower his head even when she slapped him, for no reason. Her foolish daughter follows her, along with the bodyguards accompanying both. Honestly, those guys were like mannequins throughout this whole scene. Let's shift the focus back to our protagonist. It seems those two completely ruined the moment he and Junior were having, so he decides to leave as well. The way he reacted to his fake family was completely intentional. He wanted to make something clear. The Dohun who couldn't even raise his voice no longer exists. It's time for his disgusting family to understand that. Then, the scene changes to a Mercedes, at full speed on the highway. Inside the car are the trashy mother and her daughter. The daughter is furious with her mother for leaving quietly instead of putting Do-hun in his place. While venting her frustration and cursing our protagonist for the humiliation they suffered, the mother orders her assistant to explain why Do-hun is still alive. The bald man has no idea how this guy is still breathing. It doesn't match the reports. The woman screams at the top of her lungs about the nonsense this man is saying. How the hell could he be alive if they made sure the job was done and clean? The poor guy assures her he will investigate the matter again, and this time he will make sure the job is done right. Meanwhile, the daughter has no idea about the shady plans her mother has been plotting all this time. She is shocked to hear about murders and deaths. Finally, the mother throws an unexpected question at her. She wants to know if her daughter has feelings for Do-jun. That completely catches the fat fool off guard, who blushes and gets nervous. Actually, she is worried about the possibility that Do-jun might die, because if the grandfather or father find out, they will get into very serious trouble. The mother grabs her mouth tightly and orders her to stay out of her affairs. The woman is completely determined to end Do-jun's life, with no intention of forgiving him, especially after how he dared to confront her. Eliminating him is the best revenge she can think of. A decade ago, the world turned to chaos with the appearance of the Rift, that terrifying dimension that gave rise to monsters emerging from the portal with the sole purpose of killing humans. Seeing them, their terror did not stop. It was constant and eventually devastated the world, leaving cities destroyed and burning. However, just as the dark forces appeared, light also emerged in the form of brave warriors known as heroes. With their arrival, mana stones were discovered for the first time, extracted from the corpses of defeated monsters. Back to the present, Do-jun heads somewhere while reflecting on how the magic stones quickly changed the world's energy dependence. Due to their key role, countries decided to focus their attention on the emerging rifts, basically claiming priority over them to extract resources. With the current state of the world in motion, all its industrialization depends completely on the concept of the gates and the existence of heroes, and that is why the hero profession is highly lucrative. A high and steady salary is only achieved by becoming a true hero. Do-jun has arrived at his destination, and it turns out to be the central establishment of Yonhongo's capital. Yes, it's a long name, but we will soon see why he is there. Upon entering the building, he realizes that the boss and his henchmen look like common thugs, trying to scare people with their ugly faces, but Do-jun takes it quite calmly. The boss puts out his cigarette and points out the audacity of our protagonist. Not only did he beat up his thugs, but he also dares to show up at the door. That shows that Do-jun really doesn't give a damn about anyone. Cleverly, he tells the organization's owner that actually, it was Do-jun himself who came out losing. That statement seems ridiculous to the boss, so he seeks clarification about what Do-jun means. Clearly, he has come to receive the compensation he deserves, since he has suffered mental, physical, and material losses all this time because of these clowns. With firm and serious words, the boss notices a significant change in the boy's personality. Something in him has changed. He is no longer the kind spirit nor the calm person he used to be. Also, there is the fact that this same boy destroyed the lackey they sent to the door. Taking all that into account, the boss's main suspicion is that Do-jun must have had some kind of unique awakening during his experiences at the gate. Even knowing this, the guy keeps acting arrogantly and tells Do-jun that this new confidence due to his awakening will be his downfall. The hypocrite accuses him of having too much confidence in his abilities, and to back up his words he calls a group of tough-looking guys to intimidate him. Sure, he can bring all the brute force he wants, but for someone with the experience of the sword god, they are practically insects. The boss talks nonsense, claiming that even the awakened end up being killed like trash and low-class heroes. The funniest thing is that the guy assumes Do-jun is nothing more than a Class D hero, and that his organization can easily crush someone that weak. Meanwhile, Do-kun is calmly sitting on the couch in the back while 5 guys watch him without him showing a hint of amusement. He orders the boss to sit down again. The boss is astonished to hear him keep talking in the same tone while Do-kun emphasizes with a serious face that he is not done speaking yet. Upon hearing that, one of the guys decides to act brave and challenges Do-kun in a playful way. Our protagonist takes off his glasses, which causes even more confusion, and then launches a special attack straight to his face. The guy flies away from the impact, while his friends are left speechless. But that's not all, because the beating is spread among everyone. Do-kun knocks down another while calmly continuing to explain his point of view and reveals his knowledge about the boss's shady business, which is hidden behind the facade of a money-lending company. Do-kun aims to hit a red-haired thug and shows he knows about his network of fake identities. After landing his hit, he tells the boss he is looking for a hero identity and to register officially and make money. Dodging the last guy's attack, Do-kun returns the blow with triple the force and thus manages to put the whole group to sleep with his special sleep routine technique, which works 100% of the time. Do-kun continues with his demands, saying he needs an infallible ID that won't cause him problems in the future. The boss is stunned by what just happened In a matter of seconds, our fugitive reminds him he only has 1 day to forge the identity. Some of the men didn't even intervene in the fight, which is a compliment to those NPCs because they are the type who would challenge God as a level 1 rookie in any story. The boss is completely baffled, trying to calculate Do-kun's skill level. At least he seems to be Class B in strength. He is so lost in his thoughts that the boy has to remind him to come back to reality. He finally accepts the job. Do-kun kindly takes his shoulder, but with an intimidating expression on his face, and asks if Honiju, his stepmother, ordered an attack against him. Of course, that is practically a fact, as evidenced in the conversation she had earlier with her daughter and assistant. The boss is left speechless until Do-kun tightens his grip so hard the guy screams in pain. Even his henchmen look helpless, unable to help their boss. By the way, they should change their barber too. Anyway, the boss breaks down and reveals his atrocious strategy. This cruel and manipulative woman wanted to squeeze every last cent from Do-kun's bank account, driving him to such financial instability that he had no other way out but to take his own life to escape the situation. Those were her orders. Do-kun listens to this and after enough pleading and crying, lets the man go, asking if that was also one of the reasons they locked him inside the gate. The boss instantly becomes an innocent guy, claiming he had nothing to do with that incident. He even reveals they wouldn't have paid him if Do-kun died inside the gate, which is probably a valid reason for not having done it. That leaves Do-kun thoughtful. He pronounces the name Kang-woo, which turns out to be being the guy who brought him to the door in the first place. Essentially, Do-kun wants to know every last detail about that guy by tomorrow. With his 2 clear demands, he leaves politely, completely changing the atmosphere of the place compared to how he entered after that conversation. Do-kun is once again in a state of deep reflection. The real Do-kun only had one desire: to protect his little sister and his dear grandmother no matter what. With everything that has happened, this only adds another layer of misery and shows the kind of life this poor boy had to endure while completely defenseless. But there's nothing to worry about, because the sword god is ready to do whatever it takes to set things right. The next day, guess what? Our protagonist is officially registered and, moreover, assigned a B rank, which is convenient. Unlike other stories, where the protagonist has to start at the lowest rank just for aesthetics. When he swipes the card through the machine, it proves the legitimacy of his identity because the system recognizes it, although it warns him that his rank is still lower than the dangerous mission he is about to accept. This is quite annoying to him, who thinks maybe he should have bothered the stupid person in charge of assigning ranks more to get a higher one and thus avoid these problems. Despite repeated warnings from the system not to enter a door way above his level, Doan doesn't give a damn and goes in anyway. Let's talk about the details of the Night Island door. Actually, it's a B-rank door, but that doesn't mean a B-rank hunter can survive in it. It's always recommended that heroes have at least 1 rank higher than the door for greater mission safety. Anyway, the dungeon scale is considered D rank, which means it's very extensive and will be hard to hunt solo. The good thing, however, is that it's made up of tunnels, so to some extent, it won't be so difficult for him this time. Due to the dungeon scale, it is strongly recommended that an A-rank hero take on the task, but the words risk and danger don't exist in our protagonist dictionary. In the worst case, he would have to face an entire fleet of monsters in a narrow tunnel with almost no space. Doan smiles at his first opponent, a giant snake with a chaotic purple aura. For most heroes, this would be a sign of terror, but for him, it's a sign of good luck. He prepares with his gauntlets to start the battle. Oh, and by the way, the snake comes accompanied by several friends whose tongues resemble the movie Alien. They try to attack with everything they have, but it's useless because our protagonist is such an effective killing machine that he catches and collects mana stones, as if the monsters never existed. The Black Killer Viper is a type of monster, known for its hyperactive paralyzing venom, which can take down anyone with the slightest contact. Keeping that in mind, Doan launches himself like a projectile, at bullet speed and delivers a blow with all his strength in seconds. He's about to cut the creature all over, splattering blood everywhere, until he finally splits the monster in half. With the creature defeated, Doan notices that his gear, the gloves he bought, are preventing the venom from coming into contact with him, and, for the price of 300,000, they're doing their job. Returning to the hunt, Doan turns his attention to 4 other of those horrible limbless lizards and begins piercing their heads with his brutal speed. More and more blood splatters until the vipers are sent to the beyond. Doan stays there, busy searching for a bunch of magic stones, digging through the monster's flesh, but to his disappointment, there are no mana stones in sight. This makes sense, since according to the rules of the previous world, or from the original world, these monsters only have a 3% chance of dropping mana stones, which means he would have to hunt at least hundreds of them to get a good loot. While continuing to walk, he discovers Mr. Skullhead. You might think he is the boss, but Doan has a different opinion. He asks the giant snake if it is the boss monster, as if it would really answer like a good friend. Anyway, Don thinks it's a good thing that this big guy appeared because now he doesn't have to worry about getting lost. Filled with determination, he launches into the attack to finish the battle quickly and return home. But then something unexpected happens. Despite managing to land a brutal hit, his punch has no effect on the creature. It literally only left a tattoo on its head while he was in the air and unable to dodge. The creature lashes him against the wall with its tail. Dojin falls after that forced landing, which probably gave him a reality check about the strength of the boss monster. The creature bares its venomous fangs and lunges like a hungry beast. It tries to bite him, but luckily Dojin manages to evade the attempt. Using the momentum from his evasive maneuver, he launches another powerful punch that connects against the monster's body and leaves more cracks in its tough shell. After this second attack, Dojin realizes something. The boss has an unusually tough exterior, making it a much greater challenge than the other snakes he eliminated. The shell is so strong that at his current level he can't penetrate it with a single blow. This changes the situation and makes him question whether he should change his combat strategy. With his original strength, the sword god would have swept the floor with this beast, but then he notices something. The sword of the warrior who lost his life fighting that boss, and now you'll understand why he's called the sword god, and not the fist god. Although the weapon is extremely worn from the fight, he takes it believing that a sword is only as competent as its wielder. With that knowledge in mind and the blade in his hand, he walks toward the monstrous snake. The creature lunges with all its might to attack him again, exploding with incredible speed, but Dojin responds by rising into the air while proudly declaring that the creature should feel honored that he's going to kill it using a sword. Despite the weapon's poor condition, this guy launches so many brilliant cuts in just a few seconds that he leaves the snake's body completely shredded. The fight ends with a funny conclusion, with the snake dying in the background while our protagonist's sword crumbles to dust. Luckily, he finished it, while there was still some integrity left in it. With the boss dead, Dojin has a smart idea that isn't often seen in other protagonists. He rips out one of the creature's fangs, believing it could be good material to forge a short sword with a little refinement. Considering this a reward for his journey, he leaves the gate. By the time he does, it's already night and the sky is starry. He spent more time at the rank B gate than he thought, and with the way things ended, it only motivated him more to fully regain his strength. He's also a bit happy that his old friends didn't see him in this weak version of himself because it would be embarrassing. After the hunt, he heads to appraise and sell the magic stones he obtained. Right in front of him is another hero who has come to present his large stash of magic stones. The stingy receptionist treats him like trash and tells him the commission is 40%, just like everyone else. Even an innocent guy like him can notice the scam behind that outrageously high rate. The hero points it out directly, expressing his concerns and clarifying that he's just a normal guy. The receptionist, as he already did with Dojin, clarifies that his fee is actually the lowest among all the appraisal centers. The door center charges 0.5% for every 100, but that is before taxes. From the perspective of the scammer appraiser, this is a great deal for the heroes, allowing them to make good money. They hand the cash to the hero, who doesn't complain too much, except to ask a worried question about the receptionist's disfigured face. The funny thing is, the guy keeps reciting the same script even after getting beaten up. He covers it up by saying a psychopath first destroyed his guards and then left him in that state. The hero believes it's actually the receptionist's fault for having low-ranking guards watching the place, especially since this is a C-level site. After all, rank isn't everything in their world. Skill also plays a huge role in rank. It's actually a false representation of someone's abilities, and it's only updated to keep the system running. The hero is wise enough to mention that among people of the same rank, there is a wide variation in skills and capabilities, so they can't all be treated equally. He also points out the difference between a guard, bored sitting all day in the store, and a hero, who actively goes out hunting beasts to make a living. Although this guy is giving good advice, the receptionist clown just wants him to stop talking and leave, which he does, offering to help the little guy if he ever needs anything. Just as he leaves, our protagonist passes by him with the usual coldness. Seeing him, the receptionist immediately shudders and panics, pointing at him, shouting that he's the psychopath who left him a mess. Turning to look at them, the hero is quite impressed. Our protagonist's slim physique, relative to his height, is noticeable, but the fact that he defeated the guards puts him on alert, wondering if he's the troublemaker. What I like about this guy is that he doesn't get offended by nonsense. He actually thinks Dojin is abusing his powers as a hero by intimidating civilians in his normal life, of course. This couldn't be further from the truth, since he only knows part of the story. But it's still interesting to see realistic characters. The receptionist is enjoying the show, knowing this guy is a veteran hero with 7 years of experience. If anything happened to him here, he has enough connections to ruin Dojin's life. Just by giving his name, not really caring who our protagonist is. He simply turns around and tells the old man to get lost. This provokes the veteran hero, as suddenly it seems Dojin is indeed being foolish. Dojin asks if he's looking to get revenge on him. Hearing those words, the hero feels provoked, but being the responsible hero he is, and with all his experience, he knows it's a terrible idea to fight other heroes, since that almost always ends in deaths. In fact, the death rate in duels between heroes is higher than in fights against monsters. Remembering that fact, the guy simply calms down, turns around, and leaves, leaving the receptionist speechless. Dojin turns to the exploited appraiser and asks if he has any problem he wants to solve. Before he can answer, he throws him a bag full of magic stones to appraise and turn into money. These shiny little gems are all high-quality magic stones, which raises the question of who the hell this guy really is. From the receptionist's perspective, doing the math, the total amounts to 150 million won. At first glance, it seems like a lot, but for Dojin, it's very little for a single day of hunting. He asks for the money, but the receptionist reminds him that the commission must be calculated first, which obviously causes a chilling look from our protagonist, remembering that in their little deal, they agreed on only 0.1%. Dojin calms down and tells him to give the rest of the money now. Inside the appraiser's mind, he just wants to punch him for having such audacity, but that only happens in his imagination. Speaking of which, the receptionist tells him that such a large amount needs management approval. Without wasting another second, Dojin demands that he get the approval right then and there. So the guy quickly calls his boss, whispering the details of the situation. But before he can close the deal calmly, Dojin snatches the phone and tells the boss directly to hurry up with the payment. The boss agrees, but only wants the phone returned to the employee. Dojin gladly returns it, but accidentally, or rather intentionally, smashes it against the wall. The employee trembles seeing his device destroyed, while Dojin orders him to prepare the money immediately. Now that everything is clear, this is how the receptionist ended up preparing several bags full of cash to complete the transaction. In the end, the guy was devastated for being forced like that. Maybe some feel sorry for him, but remember, he spends his time scamming heroes, keeping almost half of what they earn. Risking their lives, he's a scoundrel. 10 minutes pass and the boss arrives furious at the store, wondering why his employee wasn't answering the phone. The funniest thing is that the receptionist immediately throws in the towel and resigns. Right there, the boss sees the phone smashed against the wall, which already gives him a good idea of what happened. Seeing that, he takes out his own phone and calls Juan, asking him to come immediately. Julienne turns out to be a famous young woman with beautiful pink-purple hair. She's so recognizable that people celebrate her publicly under the name Yunuan and treat her like a celebrity, not to mention she looks amazing in that outfit. She arrives at the store and leaves the receptionist speechless with her presence, greeting him with a charming smile. There's a big reason why everyone makes such a fuss about her. She's the country's 4th S-rank heroine, no less. Impressive. Rumors circulate that she is the boss's niece, but that makes people wonder what she's doing here. Confirming those rumors, Julian states she was called by her uncle to take care of a reckless hero. Intrigued by the situation, the elegant S-rank heroine sits down, ready to hear what's going on. In the next scene, we find our protagonist, with his body absolutely defined, meditating under the sundae. It's true he's been hunting all day, and yet the rewards were nothing surprising. With the current situation, he worries about the future. First and foremost, he needs to reach a level where he can clear S-rank gates on his own. That means he must train to regain his original strength. That's right, friends, the training arc is coming. Dojin's biggest challenge in this life is that, unlike the previous world, the mana density in this world is very low, which means even giving his best to absorb mana, it will take him at least 3 years to get close to his original strength, and more if things get complicated. The positive part is that he could look for better battle equipment, but the problem is that even the worst gear costs hundreds of millions, which would be a waste of money. Suddenly, a chill runs down his spine as he senses the presence of someone dangerous. Fixing his gaze on Yunuan, he grabs the girl at full speed and demands that everyone enter the house immediately. Once inside, he closes the room while his grandmother asks worriedly, "What is happening?" The whole structure shakes with a tremendous roar, which startles the grandmother and makes her ask in terror if there's an earthquake. Little Yunuan panics, but the truth is something only our protagonist knows. This is not simply an earthquake, it's something else. Dojin senses the violent and sharp energy outside. A rift has just opened in his world, and it has coincidentally manifested right above his house. Running to take care of the problem, he tells his loved ones to stay inside, as the situation outside is dangerous for them. At full speed, he cuts toward the entrance of the rift, where the last thing he hears are the screams of his grandmother and sister calling his name. The scene shifts to the Seoul Heroes Association, where its members go on immediate alert due to the sudden appearance of a rift over the Mappo region. It appeared 63 days after the last emergency. Realizing that the White Lion Guild is the closest to Mappo, the manager orders his staff to contact the guild immediately and alert the nearby heroes to control the situation. Upon closer inspection of the exact location of the rift, he discovers it appeared right over a residential home, which complicates things even more. Realizing that the White Lion Guild is the closest to Mappo, the manager orders his staff to contact the guild immediately and alert the nearby heroes to control the situation. Upon closer inspection of the exact location of the rift, he discovers it appeared right over a residential home, which complicates things even more. Because if by chance a civilian enters the rift, they are practically doomed to die, and to make matters worse, the rift will not allow anyone else to enter afterward, and if the person inside dies, it will unleash a wave of monsters in 10 days that will cause chaos and destruction throughout the region. The wave would be so uncontrollable that it would threaten the security of the entire city of Seoul. The manager is curious about the person who interacted with the rift and learns that Do-hun was the one who entered, since he is the resident of that house, according to his grandmother. He entered the rift to protect his family. With that information, everyone assumes he is not a hero, which complicates the situation even more since the chances of a civilian returning from the rift are practically zero. This leaves all the staff with a feeling of total hopelessness as they can do nothing about it. In the next scene, we see Do-hun's stepmother completely furious upon learning of his new awakening. She can't believe what she's hearing. Her assistant reports that, although he has not yet officially registered with the Heroes Association, they have verified that he has indeed awakened as a result of his last experience in a gate. This frustrates her because Kan-yu was supposed to finish the job, but instead only made his target stronger. Enraged, she pounds the table with her fist and wonders why the hell they couldn't have just killed him as they should have. The fact that, on top of that, they charged for a failed execution is another reason for her fury. Yelling at Manager Lee, she declares her frustration with Kang-woo and sends him a message. If he doesn't personally kill Do-hun, he will owe her 10 times the amount they paid him. But to her surprise, her assistant reveals that it might not even be necessary to contact that guy since they have discovered a new rift right above Do-hun's house. Upon confirming that he entered the rift, it's clear he's not going to come out alive. Hanju is glad to hear that, and faced with the implication that he won't survive, calms down and for once seems peaceful. He tells the assistant to monitor the situation until they have more news. As for our protagonist, he has just arrived at the rift's domain. It's a forest, and in fact, it's the same forest he used to enjoy during his childhood. The Patisba forest is exactly the same, reconstructed down to the smallest detail, just as he remembers it. Even the rich amount of mana inside carries the same weight. Following the path, he smiles upon reuniting with the almighty world tree. This tree emanates mana in its purest form. It is the most divine structure and the core of the world's stability. In fact, when the old world collapsed, it was because this tree was burned to the ground, altering the flow of mana forever. However, in this rift dimension, the tree is intact, just as he remembers it, although he does not know the cause. One thing is certain, he has a chance to recover the mana he lost by absorbing it from the tree. Meditating under the excellent mana flow, our protagonist gradually regains his strength more clearly. He spent more than 3 days sitting exactly like that, forgetting to eat, drink, or attend to his basic needs. 10 full days passed, and all he could do was focus on harmonizing his breathing. At the end of the 10th night, the problem came looking for him and ruined his meditation. These alien-looking creatures are called the Bolsina and have come to burn the tree just as they did in the past. Only this time, our protagonist is there to prevent the tragedy from repeating. The creatures launch an attack while Do-hun laments not having a water attribute sword to easily take them down. The flaming monsters emerge as they approach, but our protagonist is so full of mana that he no longer cares about not having a weapon. He is the weapon, and those hands are rated for everyone. Extending his hand toward the monsters, he exerts so much authority with his mana that he knocks down one with just that. The second creature is stunned by his ability. Let's explain what happened. What he did is called mana release, and it's not exactly telekinesis. It's a type of burst attack. It uses pure mana as a detonation. He hadn't used that ability like that in a long time, since he had been low on reserves all this time. Anyway, the Bolsina creatures are not done yet. They counterattack by firing energy bursts from their mouths. These pulsating laser beams quickly head toward our protagonist, who is calmer than ever. His mana alone is enough to protect him from any harm. Advancing toward the creatures while igniting with a mana explosion, he comments that he has finally protected the world tree and that now he is ready to have some fun and enjoy the fruits of his training. Those horrible bugs try another energy attack, but our protagonist quickly grabs 2 of them and forcefully shuts their mouths, causing their own ability to explode inside them, leaving behind headless corpses made of flames. The withered bodies of the creatures drop 2 valuable magic stones for his use, but that was just a couple of them. Do-jun is enjoying his life, excited to have unlocked something called the Eternal Flame after defeating them, happily cutting the monsters as he destroys them with a smile. He is finally glad to have looted a good amount of mana stones from them. The one-sided massacre continues until he annihilates them all. Do-jun hit the jackpot. With the number of stones they are dropping, Among them, he also discovers a small coin or seed that shines golden. This is called the Eternal Flame. He picks it up in his hand and with it regains control of more power. Crushing the fragment and releasing its flames, he is seen playing with the flame as if it were nothing. Under normal circumstances, the ideal would be to continue absorbing mana from the world tree. However, the current state of his body has reached its physical limit for mana absorption. The second way to do it is to absorb the Eternal Flame completely, which would completely alter the state of his mana and transform it into fire mana. And that is precisely what he does, causing his body to start producing a surge of fiery energy. Unfortunately, in his previous life he never felt the need to do this, and he didn't care at all about the Eternal Flame, but now it is necessary to absorb it completely, and it takes about 10 minutes to process just one. Luckily, he has several already collected, so his goal is to absorb as many as he can. The appearance of the rift has unleashed public interest. Reporters, they are all gathered around our protagonist's house, while agents and association personnel protect it. Ban Hyung-wang is furious about the arrogance of a single guy who decided to enter prematurely into the rift. We also have our protagonist, but with blue hair. This guy is named Kim Hyun. Woo-in sympathizes with Do-jun's actions for wanting to save his sister, but Seong-woo does not buy that explanation at all, accusing our protagonist of entering like a greedy person who was not prepared for the consequences. It would have been fine if he had taken his life normally, but if he dies inside the rift, that place will become a detonation field for monsters to come out in droves, and that is the real problem. Hyung-gu asks Hilma's opinion and, apparently, Hilma has told them to simply follow protocol. Hyung-gu questions the recent appearance of rifts all over the world in countries like the United States, China, Switzerland, Turkey, and the United Kingdom. That is one of the reasons why Hilma is having difficulty managing so many rifts. At the same time, this kind of phenomenon does not happen every day, and yet some nations were able to contain the threat easily. But in South Korea, they are furious, because their situation could easily turn into a disaster because of a single guy. Seong-go is so angry, he wants to hit the guy who entered and is, begging for the rift to spit him back out, talking about the enormous purple door. It has been 28 days since his first appearance, the same amount of time Do-jun has spent inside now. The Hero Association is scared and has already classified the threat as a level 1 wave. Do-jun's identity has been revealed to the world for privacy reasons, but they are simply calling him a common person. Meanwhile, the rest of the world still does not know who Do-jun is. The head of the money-lending organization is already starting to connect the dots quickly, and his assistant confirms the report to verify his involvement. Hyun-woo acts as the right hand of President Wanchin Changap. He is curious and wants to know the chances of Do-jun surviving to come out intact. Continuing, the assistant is quite sure that a common person has less than a 1% chance of survival, but the mere mention that Do-jun is treated as a common person causes a funny smile on Changap's face. That same common guy sent several of his men to the hospital and left them bandaged for weeks. From the world's perspective, they are greatly underestimating the abilities of that single civilian who entered the rift. Now Changap is also interested in knowing the survival odds of someone if they were an awakened individual with powers. For that, his assistant believes it depends on the hero's level and that it is difficult to make an assessment without precise information. Even Changap admits that combat ability is different from pure survival ability and that inside a rift that introduces another level of complications. Anyway, one thing is clear, that guy has not changed his way of being. Changap wants to protect Do-jun's family, but not for noble reasons. No, this bastard plans to sell the organs of his loved ones in case he does not return, and if he does, he plans to blame him for the debt of having cared for them. This guy is the personification of a leech. The scene changes to the mesmerizing world tree. Here, our protagonist is going full speed in his training arc, since his body now thrives on fire mana. He doesn't even know how much time has passed, but he has been training intensely, absorbing hundreds of fire stones. With this, he has acquired so much fire mana that he can now use and manipulate it as he wishes. Not to mention that his resistance to flames has increased as a side effect. Comparing his past self with his current self, just regarding the fire attribute, he thinks he has surpassed to its previous version to some extent. By mastering this skill, he embraces the world tree and shares an emotional moment with it. It has always helped him in times of need, both in the past and now. That is why Do-jun is grateful for everything it has done for him. As for the mana stones, he has created a small pouch with vines to store them all. With the stones gathered and stored, Do-jun fully understands that he will probably never see the angelic tree again, but still hopes that their paths will cross again if the divine tree is ever in danger, because if that happens, he will be ready to protect it with his life. That night, Do-jun finally goes out into the outside world, emerging from the crack hole by luck. He doesn't feel that anyone is nearby, suspecting that most probably thought he was already dead inside, and that a wave of monsters could appear at any moment. However, he detects the presence of someone strong nearby, deciding to follow that energy. He rushes to find the source, Shortly after, he runs into two agents, one angry and the other relaxed. Both are Junggu and Shangu, the same as last time. Now he understands that these guys probably represent the association just by their attire, which means that in the unlikely event that they catch him, things would get quite complicated. To counter that, he forms a fireball and throws it into the air with a powerful charge. That attack ends up hitting a building, causing a strong explosion when Jung and Xiang detonate. They go on high alert as soon as they hear the roar, and realizing it is fire, decide to go after him. There they discover a group of people standing in horror. Shangu asks what the hell is going on amid the chaos. Meanwhile, our protagonist is impressed with his fire powers. So far, his accuracy is good, so it will be very useful in memory of his old friend named Tusk. He wonders if that mage would be impressed with his current level of fire. After all, Tusk was known as the strongest fire mage on the continent, and they shared a good bond. Suddenly, Jae-hyung's sharp senses alert him to look for the crack, which seems to be acting strangely, and, right before his eyes, it disappears into the fog. Both agents run to the site to see what is happening. When they arrive, they can't believe that the connection of the crack with their world no longer exists. As for our protagonist, he simply heads to his next destination without any problem. The next morning, news spreads about the state of the crack that lasted a month. In Mappo, it is announced that the crack disappeared 29 days after Dojin entered the zone, proving that the concerns of the Hero Association about a wave of monsters were unfounded. They have no idea about the unexpected disappearance of the crack and are currently investigating what happened. They are also having trouble dealing with the cause of the fire that broke out in a pasture at the time of the disappearance. Now, this leads most people to believe that Dojin is dead and that this was simply a consequence of his own actions. Without them knowing, our protagonist is hidden in plain sight, observing the contradictory opinions of people while some sympathize with the boy who lost his life. Unfortunately, the disappearance of the crack is heartbreaking news for our hero. He is devastated by not being able to interact with the World Tree anymore. Although he cannot protect the World Tree, there is still one more thing he can protect in his life, which brings us back to the capital of the HCS. Inside there, the fools are busy celebrating Dojin's death, believing that now they can easily get rid of the grandmother and her sister Changa. They are exactly the kind of people who squeeze others until they have nothing left. One of the guys even comments that they should let the little sister grow to take revenge. While they chat without watching what they say, a familiar voice interrupts them and demands to see their boss. The scene cuts right there, and we see Changa humming and going about her day, satisfied that Dojin is finally out of the way and dead forever. Her assistant checks the day's appointments. Apparently, she has the day mostly free, except for a lunch with another president. Hearing that, she is glad because tonight, she will be able to enjoy a party at a club run by Madame Kang. It's basically meaningless chatter until she enters the building and, going up the stairs, finds her men being thrown around like toys with blood splattered everywhere. And the cause of it all is someone he had presumed dead, our protagonist. He throws him to the ground and tells the disgusting Changa to crawl to him like a dog. That chilling order makes the company president tremble. Our protagonist acts as the true leader of the group and takes his place in the chair. Then he repeats his order to the ignorant Changa, who is still processing the weight of such a humiliating order. Without wasting time, he crawls like a relentless dog, as always. Dojin then orders him to bark, since he deserves to be treated like an animal. His clear and strong order makes Changa whimper in humiliation. It takes a moment for him to bark successfully, but our protagonist is not at all satisfied. He personally ensures to turn him into an animal, forcing him to bark repeatedly. So everyone can hear, the president is reduced to less than human. Just like the people he treats, Dojin points out that scum, like him, only act as obedient on the surface, but end up stabbing you in the back as soon as they see the opportunity. Declaring his disgusting name, he coldly tells him that his life is full of experiences dealing with second-rate humans like him. Begging and pleading for mercy, Changap is willing to serve as a loyal dog if necessary. But Dojin has heard enough and slaps him so hard that it leaves him breathless and spitting blood. His assistant watches how the scene unfolds until his name is mentioned. Donan calls him and appoints him as the new head of the company, recommending that he stop working under a guy like that, knowing these guys are more than ready to betray anyone. Donan orders the assistant to kill Changap with full permission, of course. It is a task too heavy for a competent servant like him, who apologizes and objects, saying that his leader has many connections, so things would get very ugly if he's named boss instead of Changap on his behalf. The assistant begs Dojin to forgive him just one more time. However, Dojin does not want to waste time. With simple words before them, he suggests wrapping the body of Changap in a barrel and eliminating all evidence by throwing it into the endless ocean. After all, it is one of the things these guys are experts at. Seeing that the boss's servants are unwilling to obey, our protagonist takes another approach with them. Dojin threatens the whole group with throwing them all into the crack as monster food. if they do not comply with the order. Yes, the mere mention of that leaves Changap reduced to a pathetic mess. He can't take it anymore and keeps begging for his life, promising that he will never betray again and that he will always serve under Dojin. This puts our hero in a small contemplation. Although he could kill Changap right here and get rid of all his problems, there is something that has changed in him in this life. Dojin admits it, he's become softer compared to his ruthless past self, so this time he agrees and offers his hand. He proceeds to shake the hero's hand, promising to serve unconditionally from now on. But wait, something is strange. Why is his hand wrapped in burning flames? Yes, although Dojin has softened, he remains relentless. Looking him straight in the eyes, he reminds the scum that this is their last chance. In fact, Dojin proceeds to tear off his hand completely, reducing it to a charred mass. At the end of the meeting, he leaves, ignoring the agonizing screams of the president, but gives them one last warning. If even one of them dares to stand in the way of his family again, Dojin will personally take care of their deaths. As for their new job, they are now officially tasked with protecting his family for the rest of their lives. This is how traitors are officially handled. The man known as Donan was just a footnote to existence that disappeared along with the rift. In reality, he is dining at the local McDonald's. The government, the Hero Association, and all kinds of media quickly moved on as if it were yesterday's news. Everyone treated the civilian who entered the rift as a dead man, even if he came out and told the world he was alive. No one would believe him. Besides, appearing after a solo mission in the rift would only bring him headaches and trouble. That domesticated dog, Anshan, is currently helping him find a new and suitable home so he can move in peacefully. For now, Dojin finally had the chance to give his sister some delicious fast food. He also informed her of his plan to move to a better neighborhood, and she couldn't be happier. Now she will be able to go to kindergarten like kids her age and enter elementary school next year. When the topic of school came up, little Junior's mood worsened. Dojin was alarmed. He's used to slaughtering abominable beasts, but indulging a little girl is not something in his repertoire. He was surprised when his sister confessed that other kids tease her for being an orphan. Hearing the distress of his adorable sister broke the good brother's heart. Dojin thought, if she doesn't want to hang out with those cruel kids, she doesn't have to. Those little bastards will get what they deserve sooner or later. Upon learning she no longer had to attend kindergarten just to be bullied, Junior felt excited inside. Dojin is devising a plan to send his little sister to a prestigious private school, where no one would dare to look down on her. That night, Dojin discovered that Kim Hongjo had hidden his grandmother and sister in some motel while he was trapped inside the rift. That bastard almost broke his back trying to apologize. He reasoned that the motel is under his company's management, so it's safer than anywhere else. Dojin has no energy to deal with that nonsense that night, so he simply enters the room and sees his grandmother again. Little Junior threw herself on him with a bear hug, and grandmother took his hand with tears falling from her eyes. She's simply happy to see her grandson return alive. At first, the hardened warrior was stunned, but feeling the warmth emanating from his family, he accepted the love they had for him with a smile. Little Junior has taken a liking to fast food, so they have been eating quite a bit at that absolutely real place. Today she asked him questions about her big brother's job as a hero. When asked if she liked having a hero as a brother, Junior answered indifferently that she did not. Although it's great that heroes are strong and cool, they are also constantly in danger fighting terrifying monsters. Sometimes they even die, and little Junior just wants her brother to live with grandmother and her for a very, very long time. Dojin was so used to senseless bloodshed that having someone worry about his well-being was a completely new feeling for him. In the cruel world of the past, he was the last surviving human. He fought monsters and creatures beyond imagination. In the process, he lost many things. Now that he has been given a second chance in a different world, something incredibly valuable has appeared by his side. Feelings he had long forgotten are beginning to resurface in this world. Maybe he can live happily. Maybe I can just live a peaceful life with joy and love. While he felt warm and comforted inside, the Korea Hero Association was in chaos. Nate Wong, founder of the Korea Hero Association and director of the World Hero Federation, has been stressed about the recent rift incident, or rather, the lack of one. His best agents have investigated the site, but no new information has been found. Feeling lost about the state of his territory is something that frustrates the founder. It's not unreasonable to think that a rift that disappears spontaneously could reappear at any moment. His assistant tried to match his concerns by saying it would have been better if at least a monster wave had occurred. That way, they wouldn't have to deal with unknown variables. Director Tajong interrupts him before he gets angrier. Although he worries about the uncertainties, he thinks he's lucky that no one has been hurt. Nate Wong is one of the 100 most respected and strongest heroes in the world. It is widely speculated that if he ran for president, he would be elected with the highest number of votes in history. His words and influence could easily bring down national conglomerates if he wanted to. Fortunately, his interests do not lie in the power of a national leader nor in the wealth of a conglomerate. It spontaneously could reappear at any moment. His assistant tried to match his concerns, saying it would have been better if at least a monster wave had occurred, so they wouldn't have to deal with unknown variables. Director Tajong interrupts him before it makes him angrier. Although he worries about the uncertainties, he thinks he's lucky that no one has been hurt. Nate Wong is one of the 100 most respected and strongest heroes in the world. It is widely speculated that if he ran for president, he would be elected with the highest number of votes in history. His words and influence could easily bring down national conglomerates if he wanted to. Fortunately, his interests do not lie in the power of a national leader nor in the wealth of a conglomerate. The only thing he cares about is the safety of his people. In other words, he is a true hero. Although it takes time, he wants a deeper investigation covering the perimeter of the rift. The residents of the nearby area have already agreed to sell their properties to the association, so that shouldn't be a problem. As a form of compensation, Tajong wants to offer them more than the market price for their homes. It's the least they can do after causing so much trouble. All reliable sources have reported that multiple rifts have occurred in different countries. No matter how you look at it, something must be happening. The United States and China have already entered the stage of controlling their rifts. Among the major nations, the United Kingdom faces the biggest problem, while reliable and veteran heroes have been sent to clear the other rifts. The United Kingdom's squad turned out to be simply trash. Speaking of them, the one-month mission to eliminate the United Kingdom's rift finally collapsed in a shameful defeat. The wave of rifts in the United Kingdom has officially begun. The city and its people continue their day as if nothing happened. Among the crowd was Do-jun, blending in with the pedestrians. Today, his destination is his favorite store in the hero complex. When he entered through the door, the guy at the counter instinctively greeted him but choked when he saw his face. Every hair on his body stood on end with terror upon seeing the black-haired youth. Today, the manager is in the store, so he won't have to deal with this sadistic customer alone. The manager quickly closed the newspaper he was reading and looked up. His voice was controlled but tinged with anger. This is the guy who has been forcing my submissive employee to buy low-quality magic crystals. Dojin carelessly took off his backpack and threw it on the floor. Actually, it's good that the manager is here. That way, the sale of his magic crystals will be faster. The manager hoped that another batch low-quality crystals would spill on the floor. He is not interested in such low-grade business. Dojin does not like being rejected when all he wants is a fair trade. The manager, or any business owner in their right mind, cannot afford to accept only a 1.1% commission. It would be better if the young man simply left. Dojin claimed that rejecting doing business with him would be a huge mistake the manager would regret. The manager kept kicking the young man out without even looking at the bag. This is the last warning, before everything gets out of control. In response, Dojin kicked the backpack, spilling its contents onto the tiles. Being experienced crystal merchants, both the cashier and the manager immediately recognized the properties of those stones. That rough bag was actually full of hero magic crystals, a legendary treasure that money cannot buy. Dojin has a pretty clear idea of how much those things are worth. He knows he has top-quality material in his hands. You see, the hero magic crystal was used by an infamous guy named Corsaman in making bad things. One night, a laboratory accident changed the course of his life and the world's perception of that small rock. The hero magic crystal caused Corsaman to awaken as a powerful hero. Since then, the crystal became an invaluable object for hero awakenings, and mana increases. Such an incredibly rare energy source is classified as an ultra-high-end product. As a power move, Dojin ordered the fools to pack their things again and left. The manager quickly changed his tone, haughty and disdainful, to a kind one. He even escorted the young man to his VIP seats and offered him drinks while his cashier polished the crystals. Dojin liked to flip situations. One moment they were kicking him out. The next, he was drinking something with ice. His first demand: full price with a 0.5% commission. As soon as the manager showed a sign of resistance, Dojin threatened to cancel the deal. In previous deals, Dojin had accepted 1.1%. Now he is lowering that already ridiculous rate even more. Frankly, just to annoy. In response, the manager bowed his head and tried to offer the most sincere apology he could, but Dojin is tired of empty apologies. They either accept his rate or he will take his business elsewhere, plain and simple. At the counter, the cashier cursed Dohan inwardly for being so damn rude. Seeing that his performance would not convince the guy to give a bigger cut, the manager got serious and gave a long talk about the market and prices of magic crystals. Note, he has no time for endless speeches. He finished his drink and stood up, which made the manager panic, feeling that the deal of his life was slipping out of his hands. The manager offered a 9% commission. It didn't work. So he proposed 8%, then 7%, 6%, and then 5%. At that level, his store would have no profit. While the manager sank into despair, Dojin attacked and agreed to settle for 1% in honor of past deals. Inside, the manager wanted to scream and curse the blatant extortionist. He simply couldn't let go of that product. The next words out of Dojin's mouth almost made the manager pee with excitement. Besides the one he brought today, he has about 7 more bags of those invaluable crystals. That said, the contract was produced and signed quickly after a few minutes, finalizing the deal. 67 billion won entered Dojin's bank account. That equals about $48 million. At this rate, his 110 billion won house no longer seems so far away. The problem is that getting more high-quality magic crystals through normal portals takes too long. If he could find a way to travel freely through rift zones, he could collect treasures like crazy. While looking at his phone screen, he sent an administrative message to everyone in the country. The outbreak wave in the southern region of the United Kingdom was finally announced to the general public. Meanwhile, travel to the United Kingdom was banned. After reading about a real problem in the real world, Do-hun lost interest in continuing to bother the store manager. In the past, no matter the country or association involved, he might have personally intervened to seal the rift, but he is no longer that kind of person. Now he has more satisfying matters to attend to tonight. Dinner is on Dojin, and they are going to eat expensive meat at the small union. His mouth watered, seeing the pork and beef marbled with fat grilling on the barbecue. The expensive meat and the juicy side dishes kept coming to the table. Worried about what they were spending, given the price tag on the menu, the grandmother slowed down and asked her grandson if it was really okay. 250,000 won per 100 grams was quite excessive. Dojin immediately buried his worries after making a fortune selling his crystals. They could eat as much as they wanted, and it wouldn't even affect his bank account. Dojin's first bite made her fall in love with the taste of that luxury meat. Wildly, Dojin kept adding more and more to the grill. While the grandmother watched him apprehensively, to hell with it, another package with fresh ribs, prime ribeye, loin, and skirt steak arrived. At this point, the scale was ridiculous. How could 2.5 people eat so much food? Well, the grandmother underestimated the appetite of a protagonist. To ease her worries, the small union convinced the grandmother to try the expensive meat. Unable to refuse her sweet granddaughter's offer, the grandmother gave in. A single bite of that luxurious meat was enough to make all her worries disappear. Afterwards, the happy family enjoyed their extravagant dinner full of smiles and laughter. Without Dojin knowing, a young woman who attracted attention had just entered the restaurant. The necks of the other customers almost broke as they watched her pass by. The woman went straight to Dojin and decisively caught his attention. She only wanted to talk to him for a moment, nothing more, nothing less. Before she could explain her reason, Dojin interrupted her for daring to interrupt dinner. With his family, if she wanted to say something, she should come back when the damn food was finished. Juno took out her business card, hoping the young man would change his tone upon seeing her name. But to her disappointment, Dojin kept grilling and eating meat, completely ignoring her. So the renowned rank hunter swallowed her pride and waited patiently in the restaurant's waiting room. With a star like her sitting near ordinary people, she naturally became the center of attention. Men and women kept casting furtive glances at the woman who was at the top of heroism. Not only does she hold 4th place in the national S-class hero ranking, but many would place her among the 10 and most beautiful heroines in the world. All the civilians around her thought the same. Who the hell is making Dojin wait? Ignoring the obvious whispers around her, Juno recalled the brief interaction she had just had a few minutes ago. According to what she knows, Dojin entered his first rift 2 months ago, came out alive, and is now suspected of having awakened. It was widely believed that he had died in the recent Mapo Rift incident, but here he is alive and dining with his family. Aside from all those details that don't make sense, a single sharp look from the young man was enough to make an S-rank hunter like Juno nervous. A newly awakened guy can't reach S-rank in less than 2 months, right? Even the oil magnate Kavmore, who spent his fortune on magical stones, took about 5 months to reach the top. It took about 5 months to reach the top. Rationalizing what he felt, Juno assumed that Dojin must have some kind of unknown special ability. Finally, Dojin, the grandmother, and little Juno finished eating with full stomachs and high spirits. Near the exit, Juno approached to finally have a conversation with the enigmatic young man. But before he could open his mouth to speak, another group entered the restaurant with an air of superiority. Dojin's eyes sharpened more than usual upon seeing the man. This scoundrel didn't expect to see Dojin alive and kicking after his excursion through one of the deadly gates, the lunatic Kang Wu. In fact, he was quite amused by the resistance of the cockroach guy Dojin. Even Juno seemed to recognize the troublemaker at a glance in the middle of the restaurant. The tension rose as silence filled the air. Dojin chose to ignore the superficial insults from the guy and called Juno. Tangu was surprised to see a ranked heroine talking to the cockroach Dojin. He asked her to take care of his family for a moment. All she had to do was get a taxi so they could go home. It would be more convenient for them to be far away while he collected a debt from a mangy dog. Fortunately, Juno was a very reasonable young woman, and only after Dojin asked and assured the grandmother and the girl that everything would be fine, he waved goodbye to them. Although her concern was evident, Juno stayed there uncomfortably as the taxi drove away. As soon as they left the restaurant, a loud and sharp slap echoed inside the place. With his loved ones out of the scene, Dojin could finally stop pretending and give the fool a good slap. He moved so fast that Kang-woo didn't even see the blow coming, he only felt the sting on his cheek. Embarrassed by such a humiliating attack, Kang-woo gritted his teeth and charged to counterattack. One of the waiters tried to stop the fight, fearing that the awakened ones could destroy the entire restaurant if things got out of control. His reasonable request was met with irrational violence. Fortunately, he wasn't too badly hurt. So-yoon calmly asked everyone to leave and clear the room for their safety. Kang-woo was really easy to provoke, a muscular fool who didn't even know how to insult properly. That's why he was punished with another blow to the face. He was completely unprepared when he felt the knuckles make contact with his head. Kang-woo was the guy who locked Dojin in a gate, leaving him for dead. Although our protagonist wasn't directly affected, he still harbored deep resentment for this scoundrel and was eager to confront him. Kang-woo, the goblin-faced bully, laughed as he mentioned how Do-hun's evil stepmother had orchestrated everything. Seeing that extracting information from this fool was easier than he thought, Dojin took out his phone and pressed the video record button. He only needed a clear and concise confession to make his life much simpler in the future. Once again, Kang-woo felt insulted by his indifferent attitude. He gathered power in his fist and attacked with brutal intensity. He wanted to finish the job he hadn't succeeded at before. Kill Dojin once and for all. Unfortunately for the big guy, his primitive attacks were no match for the expert manipulation of ki. Dojin received the violent blow with a gentle touch and deflected the punch as if it had hit an elastic and impenetrable barrier. Kang-woo had never experienced anything like this. Normally, he would have just forced his way through brute strength. Now it seemed he was facing someone far beyond what his small brain could comprehend. Suddenly, he was knocked down. Dojin followed the trajectory of his body like a hunter playing with his prey. The sound of fists breaking his skull echoed throughout the restaurant, while the waitress from before desperately tried to call the police. Before she could press the call button, a delicate hand took the phone from her. With a bright smile, Yoon-won assured the waitress that she would take care of everything, so there was no need to involve the authorities. The waitress only felt relieved to see a reassuring face in the middle of her crisis. Slaps, scratches, and punches rained down on Kang-woo's body without giving him a second to catch his breath. As far as Won knows, this bastard is a B-rank hero, and not many people can leave him so defenseless at that rank. Based on this beating, Dojin could be classified as an A rank. Although even if that were true, the fight still seems too uneven. Before the situation got worse, Juno carefully called Do-hun to stop for a moment. She was simply worried that Kang-woo would die if the beating continued. Deciding to listen, he dropped the lifeless body of the goblin-faced thug to the ground and wiped his hands. Seeing that there was clearly a vendetta between them, Won asked the young man how much he knew about Kang-woo. Dojin may not know all the details, but he knows enough about that guy to seek revenge. Juno warned him that that piece of trash named Kang-woo is connected to Kang Jum-pyo, an S-rank hero. Well, Do-hun already knew that fact and didn't consider it a problem. Won had never met someone so reckless and unhinged. This guy doesn't even care about the consequences he might face at the hands of an S-rank. Jun-won explained that Kang Jum-pyo is very protective of his delinquent cousin, and this restaurant incident will surely reach that heavyweight's ears. When that happens, blood will be spilled. Dojin mocked Hwan's worries. He's the last person who would be scared of some arrogant S-rank hero. More than future problems, it bothers him that Won knows so much about his life. Now that the goblin-faced thug is out of commission, Dojin's enmity has shifted to the meddlesome face of the S-ranker. Face to face, the wild young man stared at her without blinking, but Yoon-won was no weakling and wasn't going to back down just because of an intimidating look. Changing the subject, she apologized for the sudden visit and stated her purpose. She had simply been sent by her uncle to talk to him after learning about the bag of magical hero crystals Won had sold. She wanted to keep the rest and was willing to buy every piece no matter the price. Jum-pyo, an S-rank hero, Dojin already knew that fact and didn't consider it a problem. Hwan had never met someone so reckless and unhinged. This guy doesn't even care about the consequences he might face at the hands of an S-rank hero. Jun-won explained that Kang Jum-pyo is very protective of his delinquent cousin and that this restaurant incident will surely reach that heavyweight's ears. When that happens, blood will be spilled. Dojin mocked Hwan's worries. He's the last person who would be scared of some arrogant S-rank hero. More than future problems, it bothers him that Won knows so much about his life. Now that the goblin-faced thug is out of commission, Dojin's enmity has shifted to the meddlesome face of the comes on-led S-ranker. Face to face, the wild young man stared at her without blinking. But Yunin was no weakling and wasn't going to back down just because of an intimidating look. Changing the subject, she apologized for the sudden visit and stated her purpose. She had simply been sent by her uncle to talk to him after learning about the bag of magical hero crystals Won had sold. She wanted to keep the rest and was willing to buy every piece no matter the price. Do-hun warned her it wouldn't be cheap, since he had many valuable relics stored. She assured him that the resources of a consolidated S-rank hero are beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Well, it's not that Do-hun opposed selling his goods. He just had one condition before doing business. Nothing complicated, just a small favor, at least for someone as renowned as Yunnan. Elsewhere in the city, the crash of expensive liquor bottles hitting the floor could be heard. Do-hun's evil stepmother was collapsing after receiving new information about her stepson, who was supposedly dead. Her people were completely sure the boy had died in the rift, and now news arrived that Do-hun had survived like a resilient cockroach. Press F for the bald guy. Here, having a boss like her must be no fun at all. You can't blame her for the misinformation. Even the Heroes Association had declared Do-hun dead. The evil stepmother isn't interested in excuses. She wants action. To make matters worse, they just received news about Kang Woo's defeat at the hands of Do-hun. By now, it's safe to assume that Do-hun already knows who was really responsible for the assassination attempt on him. Upon hearing that the stepmother might be involved, he swallowed nervously. He doesn't fear Do-hun. He's more worried about the scandal that could erupt if his father or husband finds out about her dealings. They can cover up many things, but if the information reaches the media, the value of the group's stocks will plummet. That's why she ordered her people to intercept the press. If they fail, Group T and Group W will cut all deals and advertising contracts. First and foremost, the police must also be on her payroll. In that regard, the stepmother's men are already moving to cover all fronts. Knowing that at least they have a bit of competition relieves some of the pressure. Then, the bald director whispered to her that no matter how many cover-ups they do, that isn't a real solution to the underlying problem. That said, it seems the bald director might have a plan to end this headache. Even someone like the stepmother knows well who that S-rank hero, Kang Woo, is. He may be a disaster and an embarrassment in the hero world, but everyone knows how close he is to his powerful cousin. Actually, Kang Woo is nothing more than a pawn doing all kinds of dirty work under his praetorless cousin's orders. The two are completely unhinged. If Kang Woo is arrested by the police and torn apart by the media, that won't reflect well on the S-rank hero. In fact, he is already taking measures to manage this public relations disaster. The evil stepmother made a decision. She wants to meet Kang Woo as soon as possible. Also, that dog Hanshin from HCS Capital has openly allied with the enemy. He is now taking care of Do-hun's family, and because of that, the stepmother demands to have a prosecutor on the phone in a minute. Those who abandon her must pay the full price. The next day, we follow a group of heroes entering one of Korea's Fisher zones. Of those zones, 5 are being converted into safe gates. The rest can only be explored by heroes affiliated with associations on coordinated schedules. Today, Miss Yunan personally leads a team with her S-rank ID. She has practically unlimited access to any gate. Among the diverse crowd of heroes, equipped with weapons and sophisticated gear, there was a young man in a worn hoodie. Yunan chose the Clio Guild of rank A as the temporary group for the hunt. It's very rare to participate in a hunt led by an S-rank hero, so they were excited. Yunan said she just wanted to have a little fun and stretch her muscles, but in reality, she had set up this whole situation just to give the young man following her a clean entry into the Fisher. Do-hun agreed to sell him the rest of his batch of magic crystals, at market price in exchange for letting him enter that restricted zone. He just wants to make more money hunting in higher-level zones. And although it's true that Fisher zones hold all kinds of treasures, entering one so difficult just to get guaranteed and fearless profits is crazy. Well, she really doesn't care. All she wants are those hero magic crystals. After a few minutes passing through a dark tunnel, the group finally emerged on the other side into a bright, wooded area. Unable to contain her curiosity, she began pestering Juan about the true identity of the young man following him. Juan simply introduced him as someone he knew, but no one bought that answer. Half-jokingly, they even speculated that he might be the queen's secret boyfriend. Juan, tired of the gossip, gave him a partial truth and confessed that the young man was there because she owed him a favor. Not every day does a ranked hero owe something to someone. While the group was immersed in their own conversations, a huge shadow covered the sun from above. Everyone looked up to the sky and saw the beast. Being an A-rank guild, Clio's heroes reacted instantly, drew their weapons, and took their positions. The first encounter was none other than the feared cockatrice. As the expert looter she is, Juan took command and shouted clear and concise orders. Jingu and Diana in charge of defense, while Sano aimed for the legs. But before she could finish assigning roles, a figure blurred as it passed at full speed in front of everyone. With a single stunning leap, he closed the aerial distance between himself and the flying beast. Do-hun completely ignored the group's plans and launched straight into one-on-one combat against the cave bird. Clio's heroes were left speechless. They had never seen anyone so reckless. Gathering energy in his fist, Do-hun prepared to spill the first blood. Before his charge, the guild leader named Inju was already stressed by her bad luck. They were barely entering the gate and already facing a troublesome opponent. Before the group could organize and take positions, Do-hun had already dropped his backpack to the ground. While Wan gave orders, he cut through the air like a bullet. He was a true speed beast. With a single leap, he neutralized the bird's aerial advantage in the sky, took control of the field effortlessly. His blazing energy was dense and scorching. The giant bird neither had the speed nor the reaction time to block the incoming attack, so it had no choice but to take a full-power punch directly to the beak. The bird fell to the ground while the human remained in the sky. It was a poetic reversal. Do-hun landed in front of the group without breaking a sweat. The cockatrice was on the brink of death, with the mark of his fist engraved on one side of its face. The guild members of Clio were stunned. Alongside their S-rank support, they were witnesses to the brutality of what happened next. Do-hun raised his leg and began stomping the bird's head until it was reduced to bloody pulp. It may seem excessive, but killing a cockatrice requires immense strength. With each stomp and kick, the crunching of bones and splattering of blood terrified the group. Now, Inju was very curious to know who this guy was. Actually, Wan didn't know for sure either. The only thing she knew was that Do-hun was an incredibly strong human. Well, calling him simply strong is an understatement. Only a few chosen heroes can do what he had just done. Killing a cockatrice with a single blow is not a common feat. Wan downplayed the feat by mentioning her sister, who also belongs to that elite group of outstanding heroes. Still, Inju couldn't get over the fact that they had a monster hidden among them. She saw the whole scene and was impressed from start to finish. Wan took note of the monstrous power and the young man's resolve, and with growing curiosity, turned to Inju with a sudden change of plans. For now, they want to head to the center along with Do-hun. Leaving the rest of the group on the sidelines, she carefully approached the young man. He was already skillfully dismembering the cockatrice's corpse for loot. Before she could say anything, he spoke first, stating that he wouldn't share rewards with those who didn't contribute to the fight. Luckily, Jian wasn't interested in a few magic crystals. He only approached to propose going deeper, inside the gate, toward a more challenging area suitable for their current level. He accepted the proposal with a smile, ready to hunt and loot more. Julian knew the structure of that gate well, so she would lead Do-hun. He just had to keep up with her pace to avoid getting lost. Without warning, she shot off at full speed. Her sprint left a sonic boom in its wake. Do-hun watched her calmly. As her figure disappeared on the horizon, she then slung her backpack over her shoulder. She took position and stored energy in her muscles. With the first step, she caused an explosion that almost blew away the heroes of the Clio Guild. Inju thought that if they fled, it was like a bullet. That man moved like light itself. Left behind by the two titans, the remaining heroes looked to their leader, waiting for a new plan. Of course, trying to follow them was completely impossible. Today, they had to accept their role as side characters and mere nobodies. Still, it was a good gate with many monsters on the outskirts. Someone who could keep up with her pace in a race when it came to speed. She is in the top 2 in the entire country, but that list might need updating because Do-hun was leaving her behind. Moments later, completely different from the rest of the Clio Guild. Meanwhile, the race of those two through the forest continued at dizzying speeds. Without much effort, Julienne maintained her pace while glancing sideways to see if Do-hun was following her. Not seeing any trace of him, she thought maybe he had overdone the initial acceleration. Just when she thought about slowing down, Do-hun appeared beside him, asking if they could go a little faster. Julianne's concentration broke and he almost stumbled. He had never experienced anything like this. Someone who could keep up with him in a race in terms of speed. He is in the top 2 in the whole country, but that list might need updating because Do-hun was leaving him behind. Moments later, he stopped just to mock how slow she was, implying she was clearly running just to show off. While the rank E recovered her breath, Do-hun looked toward the horizon. Before them rose a colossal mountain range that seemed to touch the sky. When she asked what was hidden in that rocky terrain, Julienne's face turned serious. That place is the lair of the fisher boss, the Cassarion. This so-called Cassarion is a gigantic 20-meter monster resembling a draconic wyvern. Julianne doesn't even want to consider the idea of subduing that beast. Normally, it takes at least 3 combat-oriented rank S heroes to have any chance against such a monster. One thing Do-hun knows about the Cassarion is that it has a chance to drop a magical crystal of imaginary grade, a treasure just below the highest possible grade. With such a tempting reward waiting, he obviously isn't going to let it slip away. Juliano poses such a reckless idea. Well, Do-hun is going to fight that draconic guy with or without her. Julian watched him as he fearlessly accelerated, aiming to climb the mountains to kill the beast. She felt she had no other choice but to follow him into madness. Something dark awaits. The pair inside the monster boss's lair. Do-hun enters brimming with inconceivable confidence to face a beast that easily gives trouble even to 3 rank S heroes. That shakes Jian to his core. You know what's even more shocking? When she arrives at the place, she finds the same creature, the Cassarion, dead at her feet. The fight was already over and she has no idea what the hell happened. Our protagonist casually pulls his knife from the creature's corpse. Leaving her speechless, Juan reflects his astonishment. The creature he just took down isn't just any monster boss. In that regard, he talks about a prominent hero known as Park Hall, who became famous for hunting monsters like the Kassarian, although he himself is rank S. The first time he went to hunt the Kassarian, he was cautious enough to bring along 30 rank A heroes, and still, all the rank A heroes were massacred in the attempt. Park Hall was the only known survivor, barely clinging to life at the end of the fight. Since that moment, the guy decided to face the same monster again, but this time with another rank hero, S and 100 rank A heroes, practically a small army. The fight was brutal. They focused on piercing the creature's wings to nullify its flight. The Kassarian, back then, was overwhelmed by a rain of attacks from the heroes. This reminds me of the debate about 100 men versus a gorilla that has been circulating lately. By the way, I bet on the men. The result was the same in the fight against the Kassarian. It was defeated, yet only a handful of heroes survived. The rest were torn apart by the beast's fury. The damages that day were so severe that the Hall Sweet Life Guild still hasn't recovered 3 years after the event. And yet, this average-looking guy defeated the same Kassarian monster without much trouble. The funniest thing is that, with his constant gaze, he reminds her that she's not going to get any of those precious gems by standing there fighting the air. The comment may have annoyed her, but Julian is more focused on the absurdity of the man in front of her. If she hadn't been there to witness the battle, she would never have believed such a conclusion. The same terrifying Kassarian was brought down and annihilated with a single blow by one man. As for Dojin, my guy has successfully harvested the impressive magic stone from the creature's body. He looks at it and says he no longer cares about having an escort to guide him. He's fine on his own. He also refuses to take the rest of the valuable items obtained from the dragon's body, like the claws and teeth, showing little or no interest in them. He turns around to bluntly reject her, leaving the rank S heroine completely stunned. Instead, he prefers to focus his energy on collecting the magical crystals from monsters. He even goes as far as allowing her to keep all those valuable items as payment. Juan looks at the creature for a moment and concludes that she doesn't need anything from the beast either. It's already night and the rest of the group is shocked to see that a single guy managed to collect 3 bags full of magic stones. It's an incredible sight, even for competent rank A heroes. For their guild to have obtained that same amount would have required at least 20 hours, and due to the quality of the ingredients, more than 3 days. This raises the big question about the identity of that man, and everyone is staring at Juan, who was the one who brought him in the first place, and yet looks as confused as they are. According to Juan's own words, the guild master of Manhwa can't understand how Dojin was able to defeat the Kassarian without any proper equipment. With just this achievement, he already positions himself at the top of the hero rankings in Korea, unmatched in power. They literally said, "Our protagonist is made of different stuff." The Manhwa hero even thinks he might be the strongest in the world at his level, which leaves her amazed. Speaking of him, an exhausted Dojin returns with more bags. With just 1 day of hunting, he has already collected an impressive amount of materials. At this point, the group starts to think no one would believe them if they reported this to the outside world. Dojin's almost divine power is the very definition of madness, hard to accept. Speaking of which, they are explicitly told not to mention a word about what happened today outside that place. Something they ultimately have to accept. The impressive rank S heroine does. She approaches our protagonist and talks to him about various things. From a distance, it looks like they are flirting, as if they were a couple. But that's only how it looks to their group mates. I guess they are trying to convince themselves this is the spark of a relationship. They also think he is the only man in the world who fits well with Julianne, especially considering the monstrous strength of both. The curious thing is how the master of the Manhwa Guild quickly realizes that these two are not the perfect couple he imagined. Instead, it seems they are arguing, judging by the expressions on their faces. He can't believe there is a man in the world with the capacity to speak to Julianne in that tone. Of all people, the shocking thing is how Dojin hands him a bag and leaves silently without saying a single word. That leaves the guild master even more perplexed about the state of the backpacks and their contents. Yansita, in her own words, it turns out that Dojin fears the possibility of becoming a celebrity overnight. If the outside world finds out he killed the Casario, since that represents a problem for him, he leaves the responsibility to her. Upon hearing her decision, both are left speechless. But the irony of all this is that the law of manifestation ends up coming true, and Julianne begins to feel a growing curiosity to learn more about this mysterious young man. The girl is in love. In another location, we delve into the story of the famous rank S hero mentioned earlier, Hal. He is giving it his all with his punching bag. His assistant is impressed by his training, since he seems to be exploding with rage. As mentioned before, he is the master of the Sweet Life Guild. His assistant helps him calm down, reminding him that a little resistance will take him far in these difficult times. Even the guild master himself agrees with that idea, believing that those who underestimate him will eventually suffer his fury, and it won't be long before everyone admires his strength as the most powerful guild master. His assistant also mentions Hal's streak of hunting caseríos, which sets him apart from the others, and even says that his name will be engraved in history books as the hero who defeated the caserío with the smallest squad. The funny thing is that this title can never be taken from him by Nadia Dojin unless Stephen Hawking rises from the grave and performs a miracle. The guildmaster shares his enthusiasm with the assistant, talking non-stop about his own achievements, while his guild has been suffering significant losses compared to what it was 3 years ago. And yet, the only thing that brings a smile to his face is knowing that he is the only one capable of defeating the caserío in the best way, a fact backed by his one-eyed servant. Continuing with the topic of high-ranking heroes, the scene shifts to Kan Yampio's office, who is reading a report about Dojin's turbulent night, along with Kan Wei, about how he annihilated Yampio's cousin. Although Chai's intention was to trap him inside the portal and imprison him forever, an unexpected twist occurred, resulting in an awakening. Furthermore, the client who hired them to finish off Dojun is none other than CEO Hanaju, who is basically at the top of the richest people in Korea. It makes no sense for her to point to a single person as the target, at least until Yampio finds out that Dojun is actually his stepson, although the boy was taken in by the family at age 7. The moment Hanaju's biological son was born, Dojun was expelled from the home. This fact amuses Yampio, who comments that not even being rich saves you from being kicked out. Discussing the payment for the job, he learns they are being offered 3 billion for the work, which he considers an insignificant amount. Then there is the fact that Kan Wu was left on the brink of death after his confrontation with Dojin, suffering numerous burns and bruises. The worst part is that he completely lost his sight and has become a lifelong invalid. This only adds more weight to the brutality of Dojin's actions, to the point that even someone like Jumpio has to acknowledge it. Still, Jumpio delights, imagining that he would have made sure to cut off his limbs, besides crushing his skull. At first glance, one might have thought he was better than his cousin, but now it's clear why he's even worse. While they argue, the battle scene mentions that Julian was also there and supposedly helped Dojun in some way. This really surprises him and he starts digging deeper into the situation, since he doesn't understand what's so special about Dojun. Unfortunately, not even his assistant knows anything specific about the encounter between the two, since the case was quietly closed. Furious, Jumpio grabs his servant and roars at him to do whatever it takes to find out the status of the relationship between Dojun and Julian, suspecting they might have formed some kind of agreement. The assistant, completely devastated by the reaction, immediately flees to investigate. Jumpio is left throwing a tantrum, destroying things around him while reflecting that Juan's men will come looking for him to finish the job his cousin couldn't complete. At the same time, he's more than happy to accept her assignment. After all, she's a wealthy woman with Andrew Tate-level money, so it won't be a problem for that greedy scoundrel. Now we move to the scene with our protagonist, who returns home after the raid. After today's experience, he's more than happy to have spent his time in a crack rather than at a door. Having a proper house also complicates things, because he might have to maintain a prolonged relationship with Wian to make sure he stays under the radar. Remembering their conversation, she clearly told him that people would start suspecting her and asking who killed the farmhouse. Revealing it would mean inviting a lot of trouble, so for now her plan was to store the valuable items, and if at any point he wanted to become famous, she would gladly reveal his existence to the world. In response, he threw her the bag so she could keep all the valuables. That also means he has to find another method to enter the crack zones, because relying on Hoyan causes problems for her. Still, tonight's sleep will be good, since he can rest in a luxurious house that Chang prepared for him. But upon stepping inside, he is alarmed to see many shoes outside the entrance, which means unexpected visitors have arrived. Entering the room, he sees a group of men in suits and their boss talking with their loved ones. The guy looks like a more anime-style version and stares at him like an eagle. Junior runs to greet his brother joyfully, while Dojin is puzzled by the situation. Finally, Prosecutor Park Chaolian clearly introduces himself and points out the connection between Dojin and Chan Su due to his relationship with that guy. Dojin is immediately placed under emergency arrest for participating in the money-lending organization run by the corrupt president of HCS Capital. Still, letting the situation run its course, Dojin peacefully surrendered to this supposed emergency arrest, linked to Chan Su's usury operation, being handcuffed, but immediately and detained in a completely empty interrogation room. From there, inside, he could hear a pompous voice talking on the phone outside. It was the prosecutor who arrested him, assuring someone that both Chan Su and Dojin were behaving like good boys. Before hanging up, the prosecutor even thanked the interlocutor for handling the arrangements for his daughter's studies abroad, but he made the mistake of mentioning Director On's name, which Dojin caught thanks to his superhuman hearing. Then, approaching the detainee, The prosecutor began to justify his role in the law and claimed that since he was a child, he always wanted to isolate the trash of society from decent and law-abiding citizens. Then, he threw a thick bundle of documents on the table, boasting about all the compromising information he had on Dojin and alleging that the charges arising from the preliminary investigation would be sufficient to lock him up for at least a decade. Furthermore, he assured that they already had enough statements from Chanseo to implicate all those involved in the operation. However, Dojin didn't even bother to react to these barely disguised threats, which frustrated the prosecutor and led him to insult him. Then, getting straight to the point, Dojin coldly asked if that trash Han Hijo was behind this weak legal maneuver. The prosecutor, visibly upset, vehemently denied any connection, assuring he had never heard that name. Although Dojun already suspected those corrupt guys had worked alongside Chanseo, therefore, he had let himself be arrested to avoid conflicts, but at this rate, things could get considerably worse. Nevertheless, the prosecutor, trying to assert himself, boasted that those in his profession were not easily intimidated, to which Dojin responded by letting out a slight hint of murderous intent, enough to silence him immediately. The prosecutor almost soiled himself, feeling that piercing gaze at a primal level like a direct threat to his existence. Ashamed for having been scared by a handcuffed detainee, he tried to act brave and slap him, but just before committing that foolish act, an intern interrupted him and asked him to leave the interrogation room. For a moment, they had received a report about a significant discrepancy in Dojin's file. The hero detector that's in the building evaluated him as a completely ordinary person, and after several checks, the result remained the same. Considering the recent incidents in which Dojin had been involved, that made no sense, so they began to question whether they had made a mistake in classifying him as an awakened from the start. The entire prosecutor's report came from the Taedaejeon Iju group, which was supposedly a reliable source, but right now, Dojin was a complete enigma. How could they accuse someone considered a normal civilian of participating in incidents involving superhumans? Meanwhile, Dojin internally mocked the prosecutor for being so incompetent, knowing that if he wanted, he could break those flimsy handcuffs and destroy the entire place in that. As for the consequences, he could always take his grandmother and Junior to a safer place, perhaps abroad. However, before opting for that brutal solution, Julian, dressed in a suit and tie, entered the interrogation room, probably because he had learned of the unjustified arrest and came to check the situation. When asked why he was detained, Dojin frankly responded that he didn't even know for sure the reason. Although luckily, Julian advised him not to do anything reckless, since he might be the only person who understands what he is capable of. While the situation was frustrating, using force at that moment would only make things worse, and although Julian hadn't woken up that day expecting to get involved with the legal system, he was absolutely certain that Dojin was innocent of anything he was accused of. So, seeing someone innocent facing punishment unjustly for false accusations right in front of her, she felt obligated to correct that mistake. Julianne calculated that the Hero Association would soon start a parallel investigation, which would inevitably reveal the fake hero license that Dojin possessed, and, without a doubt, lead them to also investigate the recent incident at the Mappa Rift. Meanwhile, Dojin asked how her family was doing, and she realized he was treating her like a mere secretary. However, when the young man looked at her with an indecipherable intensity, Dojin gave in and assured her he would take care of her family once he left the interrogation room. Practically assuming the role of her legal representative, he declared that this debt would not be forgotten. Although he did not show it openly, Dojin liked that this time he was trusting her. He promised to resolve this setback as quickly as possible, and he was not joking at all. The method Dojin chose was not a direct legal defense to prove Dojin's innocence, but rather he opted to expose the various crimes and illegal activities of Prosecutor Park Chul-young, which ended up causing his dismissal. Once that scum was removed from the way, the fair investigation could proceed without obstacles, and it was proven that Dojin was innocent in relation to the illegal loan operation and other recent incidents. However, he did not completely avoid punishment since, as expected, the investigation confirmed the use of an unauthorized hero license. Although, thanks to Dojin's defense, he only received probation. Afterwards, while returning by car to Dojin's house, a breaking news interrupted the radio. A never-before-seen monster had appeared in England causing destruction. It was described as a mantis-like creature about 1.5 meters tall, with compound eyes and a terrifying jumping ability. Exceeding the description, Dojun immediately identified the creature as a Cajun, which caused Dojun to almost crash the car upon hearing that name. Information about newly discovered monsters is heavily protected by the association, and she only knew what occasion was, due to her status as an S-rank heroine. It must be understood that monsters do not receive arbitrary names. Upon death, they release stones that not only contain condensed energy but also unique information. By analyzing that encoded data, it is possible to learn much about a monster, including its true name. On present-day Earth, science and technology are used for that analysis. But in the destroyed world, magic was used, which means Dojin knows monsters that appear in both worlds deeply. He knows their names and everything there is to know about them. Thus, he casually mentioned that Cajuns can be easily neutralized using the red flower ant fluid, which is harmless to humans but acts as an extremely potent paralyzing toxin for those creatures. Just spray them, and they will stop causing havoc. At that moment, Dojin became serious. Every word and movement of Dojin only added more mystery to his figure, and no matter how much they tried to extract information about his true identity, he never gave an answer. His mind, in reality, was flying far away, devising a plan to avoid future headaches. And the only reasonable solution he could think of was to kill that trash. Honorable. Speaking of the devil, Director Han was on the verge of collapse, nervous, biting her nails and plagued with anxiety while trying to come up with new ways to deal with her husband's despicable son. The involvement of someone like Dojin in the matter only increased the pressure she felt. Her assistant was not much help. Even after exhausting their resources, they could not find out what kind of relationship existed between the S-rank heroine and Dojin. If they made a mistake and offended someone of that magnitude, not even all the company's money could protect them. More alarmingly, Honiho was worried about the prosecutor's report indicating that Dojin had registered as a normal citizen and not as a hero in the detection machines. Based on everything they knew about him, it was clear he had awakened something dangerous. Maybe he had some ability to deceive the hero detector or something like that. Meanwhile, John, the son, continued to bleed financially. With this personal crusade of his, the only thing his team could offer him were mere baseless speculations. Absolutely furious, she finally decided to swallow her pride and contact the infamous S-rank scoundrel, the so-called Kan Jumpio, bringing to the table not 20, but 30 billion with the hope of ending once and for all the problem called Dojin. However, upon receiving the call, the shameless one demanded double the pay to take care of this small matter, which even his own subordinates found completely disproportionate, since 60 billion for an apparently simple job bordered on the absurd. Nevertheless, although he was a low-level criminal, Kanjumpio was also a clever guy who immediately noticed that Honey Hula had no other options available nor viable alternatives, and considering that his company generates so much income that the lack of that sum in the coffers wouldn't even be noticed, he agreed to negotiate on his own terms. Furthermore, with Julian's involvement in the equation, the risk of facing another S-rank heroine somehow justified doubling the initial offer. One of his subordinates agreed that Julian was a dangerous opponent, but upon hearing that, Jumpio's fragile ego was offended by the praise of another S-rank, so he cursed the subordinate for daring to doubt his fighting ability against someone like Julian and arrogantly declared he could finish that guy in about 20 minutes. Obviously, the subordinate had to calm him down immediately, more out of fear than conviction. Changing the subject with a disturbing smile, Jumpio talked about his transaction with the Hero Association as he was also negotiating a deal, before flying to the United Kingdom as one of South Korea's representatives to help with the insect problem. Unfortunately for him, the association was starting to tighten its belt, and those guys had already made the selection process for hero deployment public, practically making it difficult for S-ranks to refuse being sent. Although Jumpio was a thug, he saw the association as something even worse. The operation would take place in 3 days in South Korea, would send its best and brightest along with Japanese heroes, at least. That would give Jumpio the chance to meet someone named Takashi. At that time, the weakness of the Cassianos had not yet been discovered, and being the one to reveal such a crucial fact would elevate anyone's prestige to the moon in the public's eyes. Meanwhile, the Cassianos had expanded their advance toward Cambridge in the United Kingdom, where the heroes fought tirelessly to stop the relentless invasion of those huge creatures. A decent team of heroes had been assembled who, being British, used many swords in combat. However, the brave frontline fighters could barely handle a single giant Cassiano that spread terror among the population. This mantis had such brutal speed and sharpness that it could kill slow heroes with a single blow. Still, the British heroes managed to get into rhythm and counterattack with a coordinated offensive. The group had a balanced lineup, and given their skill level, they were nothing to scoff at. Some used magic to forcibly penetrate the thick exoskeleton, while others continued with fast melee attacks, letting insect blood run through the streets. With good coordination and enough power, they managed to take down their first Cassiano. And just in case that damn thing had a second phase or something similar, they cut off the mantis's head. Finally, the British heroes achieved a victory, but a single monster had consumed all their available strength. To completely crush their spirits, some appeared. The Cassianos took advantage of the heroes' exhaustion that night. The best heroes the United Kingdom could offer perished in a brutal and bloody massacre. They gave their best and put all their effort into trying to stop the inevitable, but without clear information, they were completely defenseless against unknown enemies. The annoying Cassianos were now advancing south, and the ironclad resistance of Cambridge had collapsed. Only about 60 kilometers remained between the insects and the capital, London. Just as the Cajuns were about to launch their final offensive to wipe London off the map, something luminous began to fall from the sky. When the fluid made contact with the insects, they all froze and began to experience a burning agony. After a few seconds of resisting the effects, the Cajuns fell one after another. The paralyzing liquid flowed through their systems, rendering all their terrifying weapons useless against the force of a biological war. In the sky, the source of that rain revealed its origin. A helicopter that followed at a distance. From a safe position, the army of giant mantises. On board were the heroes of South Korea and Japan, sent as joint cavalry, and all were surprised that such a simple solution, proposed by Juan, had worked so perfectly. The sap of the red flower ant was proving better than expected. The Cajuns could not resist it and practically became empty, useless shells. Alongside Julian was Kan Jumpio, who did not believe for a second that this woman had hit the mark by mere intuition. Then, to break the collective astonishment, Yuan took command and ordered everyone to parachute down to finish the job with renewed aishi, respect and admiration for Korea's top S-rank heroine. The cavalry descended like a flock upon British soil to prevent a total catastrophe. Days after that joint operation, the whole world learned about what happened in the United Kingdom and who was the undisputed MVP. Back in Korea, the media and fans crowded the airport, all eager to see with their own eyes the pride of the nation. Reporters and their crews were desperate to get an exclusive on Juan, the best hunter of the entire expedition in the United Kingdom, who was responsible for discovering the Cajuns' weakness and leading the operation to its successful conclusion. She basically saved an entire nation from falling into despair. It was even said that before returning, she was decorated by the British royal family in gratitude for her heroism. When Julian finally set foot in the airport, camera flashes and cheers from civilians erupted, as if she were a celebrity, something she was already quite used to. Behind her came Kan Jumpio, trying to act as if he didn't have that ridiculously bad haircut. Although Juan was already a public figure, the intensity of the welcome that day overwhelmed her a bit. For his part, Kan Jumpio was credited with having eliminated most of the Cajuns during the expedition, although it was not mentioned that he basically killed paralyzed and defenseless bugs. His entourage of heroes numbered about 200 people, and it was thanks to the brilliant performance of the Korean heroes that the United Kingdom still exists today. The news published all the details of the hunt, including the weakness of the Cajuns to the sap of the red flower ant. While walking through the city, our guy Dojin heard the news and paused for a moment. He was glad Yuan had been able to use his information, but his mood soured when he saw Kan Jumpio's face on the giant screen. That arrogant face guy is another loose end he'll have to deal with soon. In some fancy restaurant, Dojin was having coffee with the woman of the moment, and Juan, very kind, gave him lots of gifts for little Junior. The grandmother, and even he, warned him not to open anything at that moment. They said it would be better to do it at home, but he, ignoring the warning, found among the gifts elegant and tasteful clothes. Juan Honestad just wanted to give a small gesture of thanks for that invaluable tip he gave her. Thanks to that information, which was trivial to him, she became the most famous heroine in the world. Compared to everything he gained, a few garments were practically nothing. So he promised Dojin to buy him a car or whatever he wanted when he asked for it. The guy basically got a sponsor. She already knew that Dojin would never reveal how he knew about the Cajuns' weakness, but she asked anyway. As expected, that man was impenetrable. Changing the subject, Julian asked him about his future plans. He knew he wasn't the type to talk about world peace or nonsense like that, and he was worried that if Dojin decided to go after Hanaju or Kan Jongpyo, things would get really ugly. To his surprise, Dojin's only immediate plan was to buy a new house, since the place where his family was sheltered was a rental, and he wanted to give them something safer in their own. While the current hero star and the former sword god reconnected, the other hero who stood out during the expedition in the United Kingdom was celebrating big time. Kan Jongpyo enjoyed his welcome party at the pool, surrounded by girls everywhere he looked. Still, amid all that distraction, his mind couldn't stop thinking about one particular girl. Julianne knew she wasn't so formidable before, but something had changed in her. It seemed suspicious that she was hiding how she discovered the weakness of those creatures. During the flight back to Korea, Kan Jongpyo also tried to provoke her to extract information about Dojin, mentioning how Julian showed up just in time to save the day when Dojin got involved with a corrupt prosecutor, also reminding her that he was present when Kang Cholgu was destroyed. Knowing he was just trying to provoke her, Julian remained firm and stated that it was the fool Cholgu who started that fight, since before that encounter he had tried to assassinate Dojin and failed. Kan Jongpyo's mouth twisted into a sly smile as he agreed with her, also blaming his foolish cousin for being blinded by a little money. Still, he made it clear that despite everything, Cholgu was still his dear cousin, and therefore, He could always use that bond as an excuse to take revenge on that Dojin guy. For a second, Julian almost let an emotional reaction slip while being watched by such a cunning guy, but she immediately composed herself. She distanced herself from the conflict and made it clear she was not in a position to interfere if something were to happen. Kan Jongpyo was left confused, since he really thought she was closer to that Dojin guy, and from that moment on he ignored her for the rest of the flight. Julianne, for her part, put on her sleep mask and went back to taking a nap. Although Kan Jongpyo couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't being completely honest, his paranoia about Dojin remained intact and he stayed on alert. Meanwhile, in England, specifically in Lonsdale, the original site where it all began, the vegetation still showed the aftermath of the destruction caused by the monster wave. The British Hero Association, with the few resources left, deployed the little force it still had inside the cracks to at least secure the magical stones before a second wave erupted. Some of the guards posted outside commented among themselves how easy it would have been to stand out as true hunters if they had known that the Cajuns could be taken down with a bit of red flower ant sap. If their forces had managed to block the wave from the start, they could have collected an unimaginable amount of magical stones. It's worth mentioning that once a crack breaks and releases a wave of monsters, it can no longer be converted into a stable portal. And for the second wave, it's very likely that a completely different type of creature will appear. There are abundant records of entire countries being annihilated during the second wave, being uncertainty the worst of enemies. Suddenly, the rift pulsed. The raid team had only entered 5 hours ago to collect stones, and it was still not time to extract them. Even so, the rank guards reinforced surveillance, since desperate civilians trying to steal loose stones are a common sight near the rifts. However, instead of following the usual extraction protocol, the rift seemed to completely collapse. And instead of the mining team, something completely different emerged. His humanoid face was covered in scars, and the armor he wore looked otherworldly. He was definitely not a hero. His appearance and clothing didn't even seem realistic. Before the poor guards could contact headquarters, they lost control of their bodies and began to float in the air. The man took a single step and seemed to teleport, effortlessly lifting the guards. One of the British guards tried to counterattack with the United Kingdom's signature weapon. 3 floating knives that flew toward their target, but a series of green light circles made them disappear as if they had never existed. With a hoarse voice, the man complained that those guards were too weak. Then he clenched his fist and the green lights began to move. As a result, the guards were cruelly torn apart, losing their limbs one by one. Imagine being turned into a mannequin without arms or legs while on duty. From his body emanated a dark miasma with which he exercised control over space, using that energy to take the cell phone from one of the guards. Upon checking the current date, he calculated that it had been 10 years since the last time he set foot on Earth, and yet his mission hadn't even reached 20% progress. After so much effort opening dimensional rifts, it was time to admit his failure. No, he concluded he only needed to increase the mana concentration to get back on track. But before that, this planet required a thorough cleansing. It was time to eliminate the weak. Back in South Korea, specifically in the Poo region, a young man was walking calmly on one of his usual agricultural expeditions, completely unaware of what was happening on the other side of the world. Carrying only a backpack, Dojin walked through the restricted area when, suddenly, his senses activated upon detecting anomalous vibrations in the ground. As he had anticipated, a battalion of disgusting worm-shaped monsters emerged, eager to taste some flesh. Their bodies were covered in metallic spikes and their mouths full of sharp fangs. However, Dojin remained in the middle of that grotesque feast, completely calm, unfazed by the ostentatious display of power from the creatures. Instead of looking at them, he focused his attention downward, toward the holes left by the worms, measuring one of them with his gaze and calculating that there were about 26 worms underground within a radius of 100 meters. With a crooked smile, he gathered mana in his hand and, excited to test the bugs, wondered how many furs it would survive his first attack. Then he fired a burst of concentrated mana directly at the hole, and an unsettling silence filled the environment. After a few seconds of waiting, the expected explosions quickly spread to all the other underground hideouts in the area, along with debris and scorching flames. All the worms writhing beneath the ground were forced to surface to avoid being cooked alive. Dojin is one of those who believe in working smart instead of brute force, and thanks to this technique, he didn't even have to dirty his elegant clothes while taking care of farming free magic stones from those disgusting worms. A meeting of utmost importance was taking place in the city. Manoni, deputy director of the Korean Heroes Association, and his boss named Tai Wong were discussing a young man who was becoming increasingly difficult to manage. They were obviously talking about Dohun. According to reports, his strength couldn't even be measured with a standard hero meter, which, to other association executives, like Vice President Park Seong-chul, was as ridiculous as it was alarming. They demanded that Dohun appear before the association. According to the deputy director's information, all the strange things surrounding Do-hun began with Kan Chalgu's evil plan. After waking up during a raid in a rift where he was supposed to die, Do-hun changed drastically. And later, he took revenge and resolved the new rift in Mapo on his own. It's true that sometimes he showed excessive actions, but he always had justifiable reasons. In short, Do-hun's power is classified as an overwhelming force. Talwan reflected that wild horses are the hardest to control, but as long as you have a good horse in your stable, that's what really matters. What motivated this conversation was Do-hun's formal request to obtain an official hero license. He received special privileges to skip the standard procedure because he had a guarantor who was none other than the beloved hero Wan, rank S, of the country. Upon learning of his connection to the Golden Girl, the association elders were stunned, knowing they couldn't afford to offend her, considering how high her name is at this moment. So Do-hun's request was approved without obstacles and expedited. He was designated as the 8th S-rank hero of South Korea without even having set foot once in the association's headquarters. Thanks to his new status, he could now hunt in any rift zone at will, which was not bad considering that his devastating performance in the Paju rift zone, where he burned dangerous worms to ashes, quickly reached the ears of the association director. That intimidating old man was quite entertained to see that the country's new S-rank hero was already living up to his title. It's not every day you hear about a hero who enters a second-tier rift alone, without guild support or allies. In the eyes of ordinary people, that's simply madness. Paradoxically, the same vice president who initially strongly opposed Do-hun now advocated revealing his identity to the public, so the association could start promoting its new rising star. Luckily, the deputy director quickly shut down that silly and greedy idea, stating they should first ask Do-hun himself if he wanted to live a life as a public figure. The vice president argued that, considering they are in an era of instability, giving the people a new symbol of hope in the form of an S-rank hero would ease the general tension. Doing his best to sell the idea to the director, Taiwan, the vice president insisted, but the old man preferred to act cautiously. Before the association made any decision, he wanted to meet the boy face to face. Meanwhile, Do-hun remained immersed in his worm extermination marathon. If he wasn't using mana explosions, he resorted to good old brute force. Every time he cut a poor worm, the rest of the damn writhing ones surrounded him threateningly. Although for an average hero they would be a considerable challenge, for Do-hun their moves were practically telegraphed. Consequently, with his hand empowered by the burning power of his mana, he launched a wide sweep that burned and eliminated a dozen worm monsters in a single blow. Then he landed again on the ground, and dozens of corpses fell at his feet. Do-hun was a guiding being over the mountain of bodies. As if he were on an infested farm, his hands still burned from the residue of his technique. He sighed, and with a slight movement, dispelled the last sparks. As expected, the constant consumption of mana from hunting and eliminating waves of high-level monsters was unsustainable. Therefore, he finally decided to acquire a suitable weapon. Naturally, the best place to get the equipment he needed was the Gazan Heroes Complex. Thus, Do-jin chose an unassuming shop and entered. A guy covered in bruises was behind the counter, distracted by his cell phone to fight boredom. When the welcome bell rang, he didn't even look up to see who had entered and simply asked if the customer had an appointment. Do-jin ignored the lazy man's question and threw his backpack on the counter, demanding that they forge a weapon with the materials he carried inside. Annoyed, the guy said they didn't serve anyone without a reservation. It's worth noting that Do-jin had already been rejected by all the other shops in the area, which claimed to be fully booked. This was the only one that answered his call. Despite that, the lazy man flatly refused to serve him. He was clearly annoyed at having to look away from his cell phone. Then, with his patience at the limit, Do-jin grabbed him by the collar, ignoring his threats and curses, and directly asked who owned the place. The guy arrogantly replied that his father was the owner of the business. If that was the case, he'd better call him immediately. Do-jin had come specifically on a trusted recommendation. Upon hearing that, the young man was released, although he snorted disdainfully, cowardly backed away to another room, and called his father. Shortly after, an old man with a modified welding mask came out of the workshop to see what was going on. His name was Choi Chi-lin, master craftsman of heroic weaponry. Do-jin explained he came on Wan's recommendation. Of course, both father and son knew that name. In fact, the whole country knew it. Old Choi was surprised that an S-rank celebrity knew his work. However, Do-jin wasn't there for useless talk, so he simply took the materials out of his backpack. The old master inspected them thoroughly and identified a giant black viper fang. It had been a long time since he had seen one. Then, Do-jin expressed that he wanted a decent sword made from that material, and that it be as long as possible. However, the master craftsman opposed the request. Stretching a non-metallic material too much could harm its durability. According to him, it would be more effective to make 2 medium swords. Hearing that weak proposal, Do-jin questioned whether the old man was openly admitting he lacked the skills necessary to forge what the customer wanted. Despite everything, he insisted he didn't want two swords, but just one. The only thing that mattered was the length, as well as an absurd size. He demanded that the mana absorption rate be at the maximum level. Hearing so many demands that bordered on irrational, the lazy man couldn't stay out of it. Proud of his father, he defended his skill, saying he could and forge weapons with at least a grade 3 mana absorption rate. In response, Dojin took one of the swords displayed at the front of the shop, examined it carefully, and evaluated its material as grade 5. Then, without hesitation, he grabbed the blade with his bare hand. Father and son remained silent and in shock. While their unusual customer performed what seemed like a miracle. The grip tightened more and more until finally, the pressure turned the grade 5 material into rubble under pure brute force. That product, which the shop was so proud of as to display it, was reduced to nothing more than sharp dust and broken fragments. At that moment, the lazy man thanked his stars for not having messed with the mysterious customer. Meanwhile, the old man silently watched his creations shatter. Then, Don Hoon warned Chachuan that if he planned to make trash with the provided materials, he better quit the job immediately, since if those hands could turn a grade 5 weapon into fine dust, imagine what they could do to his face. After securing a shop that could meet his demands, Don Hoon headed without wasting time to another dungeon. This time, his target was a natural phenomenon, a green-skinned, one-eyed creature. Thanks to his sharp senses, the Cyclops sensed a hostile presence nearby as soon as he felt it. While other hunters worry about carrying the flashiest gear, Don Hoon hunts alone, wearing his pants and hoodie, since he still doesn't have a proper weapon. For now, his hands suffice. The Cyclops, without giving him a chance to attack first, tried to crush him from the start. However, when the initial attack failed, the one-eyed guy panicked. Then, Don Hoon jumped into the air, compensating for the size difference, and his sword hand moved as fast as lightning, cutting a juicy chunk off the Cyclops' shoulder. The pain made the beast screech in an even higher and more annoying tone. Desperate to counterattack, the monster used its brute strength and gigantic size to uproot an entire tree, which had swung wildly intending to crush the hooded man. However, to its bad luck, that kind of aimless tactic doesn't work against this man. With absolute calm, Don Hoon prepared for the impact and, as a result, 2 deeper and more horrible wounds appeared on each of his shoulders. It was a true massacre. Under normal conditions, that would mark the end of the hunt if Don Hoon faced other monsters. But Cyclopes are an exception. They possess regenerative abilities so powerful they can resist and even mock fatal wounds. However, Don Hoon had already considered this overpowered ability beforehand. Therefore, if the enemy has absurd healing, the only viable strategy is to keep causing damage relentlessly, so as not to give it a chance to regenerate or counterattack. Don Hoon tore, cut, and smashed his way through the hard flesh and grotesque skin of the Cyclops to finish it off properly. He eliminated it with a surprising attack and landed like a true superhero. It was a clean but brutal victory over the green-skinned behemoth. After the fight, Don Hoon sighed with slight exhaustion, since for now, maintaining a mana sword for long periods remains too demanding and inefficient. Then, he grabbed his backpack and took out a jar, which he dipped into one of the grotesque wounds he had inflicted on the Cyclops. As if he were simply collecting juice, that was exactly the goal of today's expedition, to obtain some of that valuable Cyclops blood. Then, he returned to the Hero District at sunset. As usual, the slacker was still manning the counter, so Don Hoon left his jar of blood without a word and indicated to the rich kid to give it to his father. With this, the 2 black viper fangs could easily be fused. After that brief explanation, he refused to give more details and left the shop. All the basic materials for his weapon were already gathered, but if he wanted a higher mana absorption rate, he needed one more ingredient, and that ingredient could only be found in one place on the planet. While planning and mapping a route to find that secret component, his S-rank companion received a very important call. Juan was enjoying a relaxing vacation when he answered the call and heard the name of a country. The sun was shining, the water was perfect, but Juan couldn't even fully enjoy his vacation because of that call. After his recent mission in Europe, the Korean Association had decided to send its heroes to Brazil, which indicated that the Brazilian government and association had already given up trying to shut down the Fisher Zones by themselves, according to Honey Yu. The Brazilian monsters are especially violent, although in return, the magical stones they drop upon dying have an abnormally high spawn rate. Since there was a lot of money at stake, her guild, Cleo, also planned to participate for that reason. She asked Juan to accept the mission and go with the friend she had been with a few days ago, Inju. She assumed that the country's 8th S-rank hero must be that guy who entered the dungeon with them, the same one rumored to be Julian's man. Inju was fully in favor of supporting that budding love. She found it romantic that 2 supremely powerful people would marry off a fearsome bounty hunter without anyone else's help. After much insistence, Inju finally got Juan to accept to participate in the mission in Brazil. However, she had no idea if that guy would even return to the small shop in the Gas and Heroes complex. Meanwhile, old Choi watched his own creation in amazement, as he would never have imagined that non-metallic materials that could be melted and combined using Cyclops' blood. If it weren't for that young man, he would never have discovered such a strange technique. Thanks to that, he can now craft the sword as long as Do-hun wants. They could even reach the upper limit of about 180 centimeters. Do-hun wants a two-handed blade with an adjustable grip for one-handed strikes, something that weighs about 5 kilograms. Old Choi was surprised to see that the rude boy from yesterday now spoke so politely. In fact, he knows basic manners. Perhaps his weapon really is that important to him. Nevertheless, old Choi warned him that 5 kilos would be too heavy to wield with one hand. It's not like you're going to swing it only once or twice. Still, Do-hun knows exactly what specifications he wants and does not intend to be given on that. Old Choi estimated the forging process would take at least a month and that the mana absorption rate would reach grade 7. However, Do-hun was dissatisfied. With only grade 7, that level could not contain his full power. As expected, he really needs the final boost from a very specific ingredient. Then, Do-hun went to the door and asked the old man to just work on shaping the weapon for now. The mana absorption improvement could wait until he gathered the rest of the materials. As an experienced craftsman, old Choi had some idea of the material the young man was referring to, and couldn't help but shudder. A few days later, Do-hun went out to the city to meet a very important woman. Julian kept his promise and got him a new car. Do-hun was very grateful for the gift. She assured him this was nothing compared to all the help he gave her. After all, it's just $1 billion car, which is no big deal. When he thanked her with a smile, Juan acted like a shy girl for a moment while he inspected every corner of his new vehicle. Julian asked what had happened to him at the Heroes Association. After meeting with the top brass, those arrogant old men proposed making his information public, but Do-hun demanded a considerable payment if they really wanted to do it. He understood that President Tae-won was thinking of the greater good, but politics complicates everything. Anyway, the negotiation fell through. After his exterior inspection, Do-hun got into his new car, and Juan sat quietly in the passenger seat. While buckling his seatbelt, he mentioned the association's preparations for the imminent operation in Brazil. Upon hearing her say Brazil, Do-hun shut out everything else, approached her, and sincerely asked if she would go. Surprised, she barely managed to stammer yes. If that was the case, he invited her to go together. That proposal made the national heroine's heart race, while her cheeks blushed uncontrollably. Meanwhile, another woman was also blushing because of Do-hun. The lovely An Ji-ho was about to be scammed by Kang Jung-pyo, who was demanding even more money from her. He insisted to Director Han that she should not skimp on expenses at a time like this. He had already received $3 billion in advance and still wanted more. This man hadn't even started the supposed job of eliminating Dojin once and for all. Losing patience, An Ji-ho began seriously considering hiring someone else to do her dirty work. She thought there must surely be many heartless people out there who would kill for a fortune without asking questions. However, Kang Jung-pyo laughed at her outdated information and, as a mockery, gave her a free tip. He had just learned that Dojin had recently become the country's new S-rank hero. They are practically equals now. Director Han refused to believe that the weak, spineless boy she herself had kicked out of the family had become some kind of superhuman. For his part, Jung-pyo had spent a lot of his own money to get that information. If Han Ji-ho didn't want to believe it, then she would just have to wait until Dojin climbed this tower and killed him with his own hands. In desperation and fearing retaliation, Director Han stopped Jung-pyo before he left. He was clearly out of her reach and she didn't want to die. This desperate woman promised to pay whatever was necessary to get Dojin out of the way. Kang Jung-pyo smiled and replied that he had changed his mind. Instead of asking for more money, he now preferred to establish a stronger business alliance with the director's conglomerate in the future. By then, Han Ji-ho would have accepted any kind of payment. At that moment, Jung-pyo received a very important text message. It seemed the heavens were smiling on the lady, as the perfect opportunity to eliminate Dojin had just arisen. To be continued.